Ottawa.
It's 9 a.m.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, February 22nd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, minus 9 degrees. In Smiths Falls, minus 8. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Ottawa's downtown is much more normal in appearance to start this work week, even though there are police checkpoints remaining for anyone trying to get into the downtown. Here's City News reporter Jason White.
Ottawa police checkpoints remain in place this morning, but in a smaller area. Police have shrunk the secure zone, now starting at Somerset, up to Parliament Hill, between Bronson and the Canal. Police say the checkpoints will only stay as long as needed to make sure the occupiers don't come back. As it is, some of them have simply moved just outside the secure zone. A pocket of them have been waving signs at Booth and Wellington near the War Museum. But in the secure zone, this morning is the closest to a normal morning the area has seen in nearly a month. The Rideau Centre is open today for the first time in more than 3 weeks, since it was forced to close by the occupation January 29th. The Byward Market is no longer closed off, and the O train is running again through downtown. Downtown area schools are also open as usual. While the Ottawa Public Library's Rideau branch has reopened, the main branch at Metcalfe and Laurier remains closed for now. Jason White, City News.
City News time 9:01. Now your forecast with weather specialist Denise Andriachi.
A cloudy start with some ice pellets changing to freezing rain and rain. 15 to 25 millimeters is what we're expecting for the nation's capital. Through Smiths Falls and Ottawa, freezing rain warnings in place. We are going to begin with the threat of freezing rain before we change over to straight rain showers. We are seeing temperatures climb throughout the day as well. So the morning and early afternoon temperatures colder than they're going to be later this evening and even overnight. Today, the daytime high for Ottawa is near 6.
And right now under that freezing rain warning, minus 9 degrees in Ottawa, minus 8 in Smiths Falls. An Ottawa judge expected to decide today whether to grant bail to one of the leading organizers behind the protest against COVID-19 restrictions, and also the Liberal government in Ottawa.
Arrested last Thursday and charged with counselling to commit mischief, Tamara Litch appeared before Ontario Court Justice Julie Bourgeois for a bail hearing on Saturday, during which she promised to give up her advocacy of the protest and return to Alberta. The judge reserved her bail decision. Meanwhile, Patrick King, another prominent figure connected to the demonstrations, is also scheduled for a bail hearing today in Ottawa. The 44-year-old was arrested on Friday, facing charges of mischief, counselling to commit mischief, counselling to commit the offence of disobeying a court order, and counselling to obstruct police. Rob Westgate, The Canadian Press.
City News time 9:03. With the Emergencies Act passing in the House of Commons yesterday, one city councillor in Ottawa would like to see a coordinated inquiry once those measures are removed. Rideau Vanier's Matthew Fleury tells City News there is an automatic federal inquiry once the measures are finished. He feels all levels of government should form one examination.
I hope that both the province and the city partake in that effort and don't do individual and separate reviews. I think it would serve best the capital and the city, the residents and businesses in Ottawa, if it was one inquiry, get down to the root cause, get down to the decisions or the inactions that we're taking.
Fleury also says a long-discussed idea of closing off Wellington Street to traffic is being examined once again. Fleury says there are reasons to close that portion of the downtown for security and also the likelihood of the new tram connecting Gatineau and Ottawa downtowns. More on what happened in the city response to these demonstrations coming up with Jim Watson, the Mayor of Ottawa, on the Rob Snow Show in a matter of minutes. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
When the headlines say X,
he's got the Y.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
And let's just launch right into it on this 2/22/22 Tuesday. Good morning. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show on City News. Boy, barely past 9 a.m. and there's already a lot of news to talk about, and talk about it we will. We'll cover the news. We'll get insight into the news, gather your opinions on the news. That's kind of what we do around here. Coming up in just a few minutes from now, it's the Mayor of Ottawa, Jim Watson, spoke with the Mayor this morning. Everything from the city starting to look like it's returning to normal. I mean, it's still not quite what anyone would call normal since, some of the downtown core is still a no-go zone. And there are kind of scattered protests throughout the core of the city. And then there are, what do you even call them? Base camps, campsites in rural parts of eastern Ontario, south of here, west of here, east of here. But this Tuesday is nothing like the last few Tuesdays that the city has been through since the police moved in to end the protest downtown, really ramping it up on Friday and then carrying on throughout the weekend. But the difference is profound. The difference is profound. Wellington Street has been cleared. Same with Metcalfe Street, Kent Street, Coventry Road. And for the most part, the people of Centertown have their neighborhoods back. Long time coming. Rideau Center opening. Transit getting closer to being back to normal. And there will be a city council meeting tomorrow. And I'm sure it will be a dysfunctional mess. And would you have it any other way? So with the mayor, we got into, how this ever lasted so long. And what should happen now that it's all but over. We talked about costs to the city. Who's going to pay that bill? And in longer term, what should be done with Wellington Street? You heard what Councillor Fleury thinks. What does the mayor think? And all the acrimony among so many members of the Ottawa City Council. You know what? It's actually a good thing that the council meetings are still virtual meetings, just given the animosity. Goodness knows what the situation would be like if they actually had to sit together in the same room. My gosh, they'd be throwing shoes at each other. So Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson coming up here on City News. What else do we have? Oh, one of our favorite contributors is back on the Rob Snow Show, the poor professor from the Glebe. Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. And as you can well imagine, he's all wound up and ready to go. He has sent me, let me count them here, half a dozen emails since 6 o'clock this morning. Is that all? I want to talk about this and I want to talk about that. Make sure I make this point. All about the protests, the winding down of the protests, the dismantling of the protests, what should happen now. We'll talk about the use of the Emergencies Act. Major point of focus for us this morning, the Emergencies Act that passed through the House of Commons last night. Liberals and New Democrats in support, Conservative bloc members opposed. I spoke as well with the mayor about the use of the Emergencies Act. He's in favor of the federal government invoking that power for the first time ever. I am less than impressed with the use of the Emergencies Act. I didn't think it was needed when the idea was first floated, and I think it's even less needed now, although I understand that puts me kind of in the minority opinion. Maybe that's an unpopular opinion, but some of my opinions are unpopular. Be that as it may, we will also get into the use of the Emergencies Act when we're joined by the professor a little later in the program. Jim Watson told me this morning, and it's something I first heard him say in another interview that he did this weekend, that he wants the city to be able to sell any of the seized vehicles, any of the vehicles that were towed away, and whatever proceeds are raised from, auctioning off those vehicles should go to help offset the costs that could reasonably be blamed on having to deal with a near month-long protest, police and bylaw and emergency services and everything else. I know the professor will have some thoughts on that as well, too. So that's coming up. In addition to that, we'll be joined by syndicated columnist Michael Taube, my friend on the right side of things. He had an op-ed I think it was yesterday in the Wall Street Journal about the Emergencies Act. With Trudeau Sr., it was the War Measures Act and the October crisis, and now with Trudeau Jr., it's the Emergencies Act to deal with the so-called Freedom Convoy. So Michael will guide us through some of the similarities and some of the differences. And then another big story, of course, today is Russia and Ukraine, with Putin ordering troops into eastern Ukraine. Jeffrey Johnston is an international affairs columnist with the Kingston Whig Standards. Jeffrey will offer his insights and help us try and understand this very, very dangerous situation. Energy is a big part of that story. Parts of Europe and the UK were already dealing with very high energy costs, especially natural gas, and those prices climbed another 8% this morning. And there are pipeline politics at play as well, with the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz saying this morning that his government has taken steps to halt the approval process of a Russian pipeline called Nord Stream 2. Russia supplies 1/3 of Europe's natural gas. And as for oil prices, West Texas oil futures above $93 U.S. a barrel, up another 3% this morning, while the Brent oil futures, which is the European benchmark price, just shy of $99 this morning. I hate to say it, David, but I think someday, probably pretty soon, $1.60 for gas might look cheap.
No.
That might be the deal.
Say it ain't so.
And a rare sight today, Queen's Park back in session. MPPs typically return to the legislature after Family Day, so here we are after Family Day. There'll be a question period this morning. The province still under a state of emergency. We'll bring you the latest from there and do the talkback hour as we do every morning between 10 and 11 o'clock. Last week, I was asking you, hey, what do you think the weekend is going to look like? Well, the weekend has come and gone. So let's talk about how it all went down at 750-1310, and we'll focus on the use of the Emergencies Act that did pass yesterday through the House. All of that this morning on The Rob Snow Show on City News.
So the Birth of Absinthe was 2002, I think, 2003, and I was working at Urban Bistro, happily, where Allium is now. And then this space where Holland Cafe was came up. It's on the corner of Spencer and Holland. And I spoke to the landlord, and there's a lot of interest from a lot of other people, but he and I just, got along super well, and he put a lot of faith in me. So Carmen Turner is his name. He gave me the lease to the place and really pretty much gave me all the equipment in the place. So I was really lucky. I've been really lucky with landlords that way, actually, both my current landlord and Carmen Turner. Because if there hadn't been Carmen Turner, there wouldn't have been Absinthe. So we were there for a few years and just sort of outgrew the place. And then now we're here. It's obviously been tough, and it's been tough for everyone. I mean, that's the been the big democratic sweep of, like, in restaurants and the hospitality and the arts that we were talking about earlier. It's like everybody's been impacted pretty much the same. From everybody that I talked to, we're down 80%. We're climbing out now. I think one of the saddest things is like we went down to 2 employees from 25. And we're now at 4, and we're bringing 2 new people on this week, so we'll be at 6. So it's, little steps. So it's been tough. It's, I've got the most expensive clubhouse ever here, because some days you come and you don't do any business, but you're here. But I'm grateful for what I do have. I think everybody's optimistic now, not necessarily just about the vaccine, but about like the vaccine, spring, being able to be outside. I think you're going to see a lot of like pop-up things happen in parking lots and on sidewalks and like that, rather than being actually inside somebody's commerce. I think we'd like to take it outside. I know my staff would. My staff like the outdoors now all of a sudden, all 4 of us. 6 soon. But we'll be doing some business in the patio in the parking lot, and we have a patio out front. And I hope other restaurants and stores will do the same. I hope that they take advantage of like the sidewalk and doing sort of, guerrilla marketing and stuff like that, and really shaking it up a bit. You can find us at Absinthe Cafe at 1208 Wellington Street West in Hintonburg, and you can find us online at absinthecafe.ca.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News.
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
Well, the city looks a lot different this Tuesday morning than the Tuesday mornings we've become accustomed to. And to review some of the recent happenings in the nation's capital, we're joined once more by Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Well, the city's core seems to be slowly returning to normal. How does that feel?
Well, a great relief, most importantly to the residents in Centertown and the Byward Market and Lower Town. The Rita Center is going to be opening. The fences have been taken down at the Byward Market. The red zone perimeter has shrunk over the course of the last 24 hours. So a lot to do, a lot to rebuild, obviously. But at the end of the day, I'm very, very proud of our police services, Ottawa Police, obviously, and Chief Bell, as well as the RCMP, OPP, and I think we had about a dozen other municipal police forces from around Ontario and throughout Canada. So they came to our aid, and I've been meeting or phone calling mayors and thanking them for their support over the course of the last couple of weeks when we had a very strong police presence that finally brought this nightmare to an end.
Whether it was the strain on police forces, bylaw services, other emergency services, public works, it's obviously it's had to have taken an enormous financial toll on the city. How much do you think all of this has cost, and what can the city do to recoup some of those costs?
Well, that's a very good question, because the Ottawa taxpayers shouldn't bear this burden. We estimate it's going to be over $20 million in costs. That's everything from $800,000 a day in police costs to the overtime, as you pointed out, of public works. We filled 20 massive bins of garbage on Wellington Street just in the last 2 days. And, snow plowing to get in there to get the street back to normal use, the cost of the fencing, and the list goes on, paramedic costs, bylaw. And so we believe a couple of things. First of all, as I said, the property taxpayers of Ottawa who suffered the most in Canada should not be paying for this. It should be coming from the other orders of government, because that's who they were protesting. They were protesting mandates for masks and cross-border travel, which is a federal and provincial responsibility. So I've had the initial discussions a couple of weeks ago with the Premier and the Prime Minister about the fact that we're keeping track of all of the costs, and we're going to need their support to pay the bill. And also, the city is now, compounded, I think, 115 or 120 vehicles. I've asked our city staff whether we have the legal authority to both confiscate, which we've done, and sell those vehicles to help reduce the cost to taxpayers.
Okay. Well, what would you say to people who probably still wonder why it took so long to end this protest? What would you say to those people?
You have a very good question, and we're looking for an accurate and honest answer, because that's one of the reasons why Councillors Tierney and Hubley put forward a motion to call for an independent investigation as to how this was allowed to happen, why it went on so long, why there didn't seem to be any ability to cut off the supply chain of diesel and food and so on to these people who are occupying our streets illegally. And then the federal government, under the Emergencies Act, is required by law to also have an independent investigation so that we can answer those basic questions. I can speculate, but I'm obviously not privy to the information, but it was pretty public that this group was coming. I'd like to know, did we have any intelligence that said they were prepared to stay for an extended period of time? And secondly, why were they not diverted away from our most prestigious street in the country? Because obviously they wanted the backdrop of Parliament Hill to prove their point that they were not going to leave. So I have to give full credit to our police services, who executed a very, very solid plan. And as you know, Rob, this could have gone a different way with, people shot, people killed, people seriously injured. We had a number of minor injuries, but no one hurt seriously, and certainly no deaths. So they did it well. They used a measured approach. They weren't, but a firm approach. And we saw that first at Rideau and Sussex, then on Wellington, and then on Coventry at the baseball stadium.
Some councillors are already talking about preferring to have vehicle traffic removed from Wellington Street for the long term. What do you think of that idea?
I think it's a reasonable idea to examine, and I would have no difficulty if staff come back and our engineers and security officials say the best thing we should do is to prevent this from happening in the future, is to have the street, closed off with bollards. And we have to take into account, of course, that there's also two proposals. One, a loop, and another is the Gatineau tram that wants to use Wellington, so that has to be taken into account. But by and large, as you may recall, Rob, the bus hijacking that took place, and the bus got stuck in the front lawn of Parliament Hill. I was working on the Hill at the time. Yep. And right after that, there was a massive rethink of security. I remember bringing my parents to see the Christmas lights and drove right up on the hill and under the Peace Tower. Yep. And obviously that's not going to happen again. And it's the same with when Corporal Cirillo was shot and walked into the front door of the center block of the Hall of Honor and started shooting it up. Again, that acted as a catalyst for the whole review of the security services, and we got rid of the Senate Security and House of Commons and created PPS. So I think it's a reasonable assumption that Wellington Street will not be open like it has been for the last 100 years.
But let's say, picturing it, say bollards down by, the Supreme Court, and maybe at the other end near, I don't know, the Chateau Laurier or someplace like that. The city couldn't just go ahead and do that by itself. It would have to consult, I assume, with...
Yeah, technically they could go ahead because it's a city street. Okay. There's a lot of confusion as to whether it's part of the parliamentary precinct. It isn't. It's run entirely by the city and maintained by the city. But of course we would reach out to the community and reach out to RCMP, Ottawa Police Service, PPS, and the House of Commons itself, because while it's a city street, the only businesses on that street are government businesses. No one lives on the street, and that was one of the arguments I was raising why we need a greater police presence in the neighborhood, because no one lives on Wellington Street in that section of Ottawa, but tens of thousands of people live in the residential area, and they need a greater protection from the noise and the boorish behavior of some of these protesters.
Okay. What further relief is the city looking at to provide to businesses that were impacted in the protest zone?
Well, as you know, we're not allowed to, by law, to a bonus or provide direct assistance, but we put forward a proposal that a number of councillors on Wednesday are going to bring forward as motions. Using some of the tools we have in our toolbox, we're going to provide a funding grant to the BIAs most harshly affected to help them with marketing, a tax deferral program for those businesses hard hit, support for the music industry to have live music come back into the downtown, no charge transit for the people in Rideau Vanier and those stops in Rideau Vanier and Somerset, and no charge parking in those areas again for the next month, for an entire month. So that will act as a bit of an incentive to get people to come downtown to shop. We need to get out there and support those businesses like never before, because, of course, they were all suffering greatly as a result of the pandemic. But the lockdown imposed by the truckers was more severe than the lockdown by the province. So I think bottom line is, we're going to have to rely once again on the goodwill of the people of Ottawa to go down and frequent those businesses who have literally been, kicked in the gut twice now over the course of the last couple of weeks.
Okay. The Emergencies Act passed through the House yesterday. What's your reaction, Mr. Mayor?
Well, I'm glad it did, because some members of Parliament seem to think the crisis is over. It isn't. That's why we still have fencing up in a good portion of Somerset Ward. That's why, we're monitoring the activities in Arnprior and Vantlick-Hill and Embrum, where trucks are gathering on farmers' fields. We needed that Emergency Act to get tow trucks. I said to someone the other day, Rob, I've never been so excited to watch television and see tow trucks in the downtown core, because that was one of the biggest stumbling blocks we had. We only had 2 tow trucks at our disposal. Those were the OC Transco tow trucks. So that act allowed us to basically force tow truck companies to come and do the work that was required. And it was a mess, as you know. Wellington was bumper to bumper, and Eli El-Shatiri and I toured the site 2 days ago, and it was such a pleasant experience to see the entire Wellington Street void of camper trailers and bouncy castles and hot tubs and everything else. It was quite remarkable how quickly that place was cleaned up. But we needed those tow trucks, and the Emergency Act gave us that. It also gave us the ability to bring in police officers from outside of Ontario and not go through the long task of getting them each individually sworn in. That was another aspect of the Emergency Act that was helpful to us.
All right. Many longtime observers of Ottawa City Council proceedings say they've never seen so much acrimony among members of City Council, that there seems to be not only disagreement, but just genuine dislike among some members of council. And they say part of that is because of your leadership. How do you respond to that criticism?
Well, look, we faced the most challenging situation in the city's history, quite frankly. People have strong emotions. People were not satisfied with the way the police were handling the issue up until when they implemented their plan. And that frustration, like it did in the House of Commons, boils over to City Council. I think it was Churchill said that, these forums are not tea parties. People have strong opinions, and they get emotionally charged. And I get that. I have strong opinions on where the city should go, and other people who are running for mayor have strong opinions on where it should go. So we're in an election year, no doubt about that. There's a number of people running for office, and the public will have the opportunity to decide the future direction of the city government. I'm getting out of politics at the end of my term, and look forward to being a witness to the municipal race. But at the end of the day, if the council members are not satisfied with the direction of an agency or part of the city, they speak out against that. And that's what we saw happen with the Police Services Board and the changes that were made there. And I know from speaking with officers and being out in the communities, people have a sense of relief that Eli is back as the board chair. He has 12 years experience, and our objective in the next several weeks is to bring stability back to the city so that we can start rebuilding the lives of those people who have suffered the most. Okay. So it's fine to get sidetracked by debates and squabbles at City Council or up on the Hill or at Queen's Park. But my focus and preoccupation is what can we do to ensure this never happens again? How do we learn the lessons, and how do we move on to support those businesses that have suffered greatly as a result of this illegal occupation?
You're Ottawa's longest-serving mayor. Yep. Does this period, the last month, where does it rank in being the toughest during your time as mayor? Is this the toughest time you've had as mayor of Ottawa, the last month?
Well, I would say on a short-term basis, 4 weeks, it was the toughest. But the tougher than that was the pandemic, and we're still living through that. People often forget, we're in the midst of a pandemic. And that is tougher because it's lasted so long, coming up on 3 years, and it affected so many people, and so many people were killed, as a result of the pandemic. Over 600 people in Ottawa alone. So I would say that has been much tougher than this for the simple reason that it just lasted forever. It was draining. It was a yo-yo. 1 minute your business is closed, the next it's open, but seating capacities. And then you had a lot of people, spreading misinformation and resentful of the fact that we had to impose these health guidelines. So people's, nerves were frayed going into the occupation, particularly those in Ottawa who suffered the most because of the occupation. And as a result of all of the activity that public health was trying to get across, that was important for us to listen to so that we could finally bring this pandemic to an end.
Thank you for your time this morning, Mr. Mayor.
My pleasure. Take care. Have a nice day, Rob.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, February 22nd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now, -9 degrees in Ottawa, -8 in Smiths Falls, and here's what's making news of this hour. Well, breaking news from the courthouse on Elgin Street. Bail denied for convoy protest organizer Tamara Litch. She will remain in custody. Justice says she believes that there was a substantial risk Litch will either engage in illegal behavior or counsel others to do so. The justice says, pardon me, she was not impressed or persuaded by Litch's testimony. The city may look a lot closer to normal than just a couple of days ago, but still measures to make sure protesters don't try to move back into our downtown. Police checkpoints do remain at areas leading into the downtown, and some services may not be fully reopened, but things like Rideau Centre and LRT back to full operation today. Ottawa's Mayor Jim Watson says there will be a full council meeting tomorrow after a couple of special sessions over the past couple of weeks. Watson tells the Rob Snow Show he will be defending his actions during the protests, saying he really had no jurisdiction to deal with protests and the measures that he could have taken over and above the actions he did approve already, like the city's state of emergency, was as far as he could go. Watson says among measures to be discussed tomorrow at Council is help for businesses that have been affected by the protests. Ottawa police investigating a couple of weekend shooting incidents, including one that claimed the life of a 20-year-old woman. Sahur Yar. Police were called to the Ottawa hospital just after 6 for the gunshot victim, who died about an hour and a half later. And the province is eliminating license plate renewal fees effective March 13th. This is actually retroactive to March of 2020. If you own vehicles, you'll get a refund check either late March or early April. City News Time, 9:33. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Oh, a refund from the Ontario government for license plate stickers. Money that could arrive in your bank account from the Doug Ford government 2 months before the election. Sure, one has nothing to do with the other. And the big breaking news right now is that bail has been denied for protest organizer Tamara Litch. So she will remain in custody, with the justice saying that she believes there is a substantial risk that Litch would engage in illegal behavior or counsel others to do so. So we'll have more on that story, big story, coming up during our 10 o'clock news here on The Rob Snow Show. On City News, as we welcome back the poor professor from the Glebe, Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School at Carleton University. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Yeah, it's great to hear from you. So, I mean, the big story is the aftermath of the protest, and I suspect we'll spend most of our time talking this morning about this.
Right.
So many angles to discuss. Why don't you start? What are your initial thoughts, Professor, as we
Well, I'm glad it's over.
week?
I think everyone is glad it's over.
Yeah.
As you know, I have, from the very beginning, I've argued there's no such thing as an illegal protest, because that's what the law of our land says. There are illegal acts. They're codified in the Criminal Code of Canada. Anybody who breaks those acts, violates those, commits those behaviors, can be prosecuted and charged, as they should be. And that includes blocking traffic, blocking roads, harassing people, and so forth. So I, from the get-go, said that the truck should never have been allowed in the downtown. Huge mistake. Protesters can be in the downtown. People have been protesting downtown since the beginning of my life, as long as I can remember, but that doesn't extend to trucks and so forth. Okay, so let's set that aside.
All right.
Because that's happened, and so the blockade had to end. There was laws being broken. People were being prosecuted. Fair enough. But now we're looking at the bigger picture, I think, and saying what went wrong and who's to blame.
Yeah.
And the logic is inescapable, and the facts are inescapable. The buck, as Harry S. Truman taught the world way back then, he said the buck stops at the top. The buck stops with the president or the leader, the prime minister.
Right.
He said the president, but it's the same in our country as the prime minister. And this isn't just a technical description of hierarchy, these at the top of the food chain. He understood that the president or the prime minister commands the bully pulpit, commands to use the language of political scientists, commands the legitimacy to speak on behalf of the country. So their powers are enormous, their powers of persuasion, not just their legal powers, their powers of influence and persuasion are enormous. And I think that Mr. Trudeau failed the test completely. He should have, people say, what could he have done? What he should have done was so obvious. Once he realized that and I'm not blaming him for the trucks arriving, I mean, that was a failure of police enforcement, as we all know at the local level.
Okay.
But once he realized that there was a protest on his front door, or on the front door of Parliament Hill, and it didn't look like it was going away, I said then, and I am more convinced now, he should have done exactly what Richard Nixon did in 1970 when there were 300,000 or 500,000 people tying up Washington, D.C. on the Lincoln Memorial and on the Washington Mall. He got up at 2 o'clock in the morning and went out and started to talk to the protesters.
Yeah,
Didn't negotiate. He didn't negotiate the end of the Vietnam War. What an idiotic idea. He just went out and said, I want to talk to you. I want to find out what's going on in your head.
Really?
And Mr. Trudeau should have, yes, with his full RCMP detail. He could have taken 10 details. I don't care. This is not a quibble about his security detail.
Yeah.
He should have walked down that the Wellington Street, and just said, I'm not here to negotiate anything. I just want to talk to you. Like, what's up? What is going, well, what are your problems? Talk to me. I want to listen to you.
I don't know about that.
That's called leadership. Well, there was a guy called Pierre Elliott Trudeau in 1970.
Yeah.
And there was a protest there was a parade, and there was some violence that broke out at the protest. Did he run into the bunker?
No.
He sat there. He didn't.
You're talking about Jean-Baptiste, Saint Jean-Baptiste.
Yeah, he didn't yell and scream and call them terrorists. He said, I have a right to stay here and watch this parade.
Yes.
He wasn't afraid of the protesters. And that's called leadership and character. And I think that that's what Mr. Trudeau, he could have defused the protests. I think it could have ended a lot sooner. And maybe I'm being naive, but at least you got to give it a try and show leadership by throwing the gasoline repeatedly on the fire, calling them racists and calling them terrorists and misogynists.
See, I do agree with you on that he didn't strike the right tone in his public comments on it, right?
Let me put it another way, because
unnecessarily divisive. But,
let me talk I like to use sort of short clips sometimes.
Okay.
What the country needed was Lincoln, and he gave us Putin. Now, not literally, he's not invading another country.
Right.
I mean that mentality, that tough man, macho man, toxic masculinity of Putin. That's what Mr. Trudeau gave us instead of Abraham Lincoln, who said it, and just bear with me, Rob, it's a very short sentence, from the Lincoln second inaugural at the end of the Civil War, with malice toward none, with charity for all, to bind up the nation's wounds, to achieve and cherish a lasting peace among all. Nobody can say that any of Trudeau's speech and comments, public utterances, for the last 2 or 3 weeks is captured by that single sentence of Lincoln in the second inaugural.
Okay, so a lot of blame for Mr. Trudeau then.
Well, he's not the only one.
Well, who else?
I said it starts there.
Come on, let's do it. It's Tuesday after the most of it is over now. So not that it's all over, but mostly it's over. So let's do the blame game.
Well, the other one, it has to fall on the shoulders of the Mayor Watson. And, I know he's already giving excuses and, well, it wasn't really me and pass the buck. But the buck stops there. I mean, if it's not the mayor who's responsible for the city of Ottawa, who is it?
But what could the mayor do? What could the mayor do? Like, the mayor's not the police.
Well, when he didn't have, first off, I watched a very interesting interview with the former head of the OPP, now retired, on Evan Solomon on CTV Question Period on Sunday morning. And Evan Solomon put directly to him a very direct question. Could this have been addressed without the Emergencies Act? He said, absolutely. He said, I was leading the response to the G20 protests in Toronto that got very, very bad, very ugly. He said, I was also on the detail that dealt with the very violent demonstrations against George W. Bush when he came to Ottawa in 2002 or 2003. And he said, we didn't use the Emergencies Act. We dealt with the protesters with a lot of police, he said, a lot of resources.
Right.
And so, again, Jim Watson did not calibrate or have an understanding. He didn't assess it strategically accurately, saying, you know what, I don't have enough bodies here. I don't have enough people here on the boots on the ground. I'm going to request it formally in writing and communicated through the media and say, look, we need more resources here right now. And so there was a failure of just simply analysis and understanding.
But it was within, I think it was on the 5th day of that Chief Slowly said there may not be a policing solution to that. That was on the 5th day that was said, which was sort of, wouldn't you interpret that as, a cry for help? Like, we need more people. There are 5,000 people downtown. We only have 1,200 police officers. Yeah. And on the weekend, it grows to 9,000 or whatever the case.
When Chief Slowly said that, the way I interpreted it was shades of my comment a moment ago, that going and talking to people is probably a better first solution. In other words, you do jaw first before you go to war. I'm speaking in metaphors here. You go and talk to people first and see if you can de-escalate the situation before you go in with the heavy, heavy force. And I thought, and I don't know the man, I've never met the man, but I thought that's what Chief Slowly was saying, was that let's try a non-confrontational approach first. It didn't work because there was nobody going in and walking down that street. And that's why I said, and Pierre Poilievre had a gift from the gods, an opportunity to go and not escalate the situation, but to say, look, I'm going to try to end this.
And try and kind of like broker a peace deal or something.
Broker a peace deal and say, look, you've brought it to the national attention of everybody, your concerns now, and then use his influence, whatever influence he had or has or had, to then get some, at least even if he got half the people to go home, or a third, he could declare victory. And so that's why he came out of this, I don't think, looking good either. But the two principal people are the people who have the authority. The Prime Minister of Canada, and because it's the capital of Canada, and this was being held on Parliament Hill, and secondly, Mayor Watson, who is the chief of the city of Ottawa, and he's on the police board, remember. So, there was just a failure of the way they responded, the rhetoric used in public conferences. It was very hostile and very confrontational, and I thought it exacerbated it greatly. It was not just the language, Rob. It was this denial, absolute denial, in the attempt to mislead and deceive Canadians about who they were. They're Americans, they're foreigners, they're Trumpians from the States, and I even had people telling me they weren't even working class people. I admire Andrew Coyne, okay? I've read his columns since he started writing, I think. But he, in one of his columns, denied. He said the class has nothing to do with this. Well, who do you think was in this protest? Neurosurgeons from the Ottawa General Hospital? Full professors from the sociology department?
Deputy ministers of finance, yeah, sure.
These were people, working class people from across Canada. Yeah. Evan Solomon, God bless Evan Solomon, went down on the second week, I think, and started walking down the street with a cameraman, camera person, all by himself, no cops around him, just walking down saying, can I talk to you? And he put these people on air, and people realized They're just ordinary people from across Canada.
Yeah.
They're Canadians, people.
Yeah.
They're working class Canadians who are, yes, mad as hell. But this constant, they're terrorists from abroad who have infiltrated our country, and they're trying to declare civil war. This was so grotesquely irresponsible. I mean, it was really, I thought it bordered what the Prime Minister was saying and Mark Carney was saying bordered on hate speech.
Oh, go away.
Come on. They were advocating hatred towards the people that they disagreed with. Look, if you say you're a terrorist, you're a misogynist, and you're a racist, can anybody call that language of love?
Okay, all right.
Do you get my point?
Yeah, I get your point. Okay, look, when we come back, we'll stop here. We'll talk about the Emergencies Act, okay? Where's the emergency? Now, on this Tuesday morning, Professor Ian Lee is with us every Tuesday morning, Sprott School of Business, Carleton University. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
Well, we're celebrating our 43rd year. It's still family operated. We're in our second generation. We, pre-COVID, we're at about 1,000 employees. We have 20 stores from coast to coast in Canada. We do our own manufacturing. Right here in Ottawa, we have about 160 people that support Canadian-made manufacturing in addition to our retail stores. Taking you back to mid-March and the impact of the pandemic on Lee Valley. Lee Valley was actually in a tough spot. We had just launched our website a few months prior to that, and we were going through, a fairly typical deployment dive where your customers retract as they adjust to the website. And then under stress already, this pandemic hit. And in the early days, it was pretty critical. It hit us really hard. Stores were closed. We weren't sure what to do, so we had to go right into survival mode. As a result, we had to take our workforce almost back to half of where we were at because the stores were closed, and with 20 stores, that's a big retail workforce. But what we were able to do pretty quickly, with a little luck, being essential, selling tools and hardware, we were able to adjust our business model, with respect to the stores and our fulfillment operation. That new website that we were under stress worked out well for us because as the world was under house arrest, people were looking to online, and the conversion to our online sales in some cases almost doubled. And we saw tremendous interest in things to do at home. Where we were lucky once again and fortunate is that our product offering. Work at home tools, craft, hobbies, backyard, container gardening, you name it. What we sold was really appealing to people. With respect to our stores, Lee Valley, a rare unknown fact was that we were one of the pioneers of curbside pickup. We've been doing it for 25 years. Pretty much dove right into the application to help with the contactless shopping right away. We took the application, and it's not like a Apple application where you have to download it to your phone and clutter up your phone. This is literally resides right on our website. So you walk into our store with your phone, you pull up our website, and there's a little scan icon. You just tap that, select your store, off you go. You go through the showroom, you scan product, you can read more about it, you can check the on hand, you can add it to your cart, continue to shop, and when you're ready, you just submit it to the counter. We'll go pick it for you. We'll call out your name, we'll check you out, send you on your way. You haven't touched anything. It's completely safe, and it's using a device you're comfortable with and a website that you're familiar with. Amazingly, 9 out of 10 people that used it loved it and want to use it again.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
So we're back with Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business, where he is Associate Professor of management. So, want to get your reaction to the passage of the Emergencies Act. What do you think about that?
Just one more quick point I forgot to make.
Go ahead,
what I said just before you went to break.
Yeah.
What was so objectionable with those three comments was there was no evidence. I mean, he was very clearly not only talking about the protesters themselves, but he said those who support them. Well, the polls are showing, Frank Graves, the Liberal Party pollster, showed that about a third of Canadians support it. Well, there's 30 million adult Canadians over 18. A third is about 10 million. So when you start saying that a third of the country is racist and misogynist and terrorist, you better have some good data to back you up. Better have some evidence. But there was none. We know that. It was just made irresponsibly in the heat of the moment. But you should never talk like that as a leader. There was no evidence for that. That's why I'm saying it was such powerful and completely and deeply inappropriate when you have no evidence for such a claim. You know, on the Emergencies Act, as I mentioned a moment ago, the former, I believe he was the chief, I may be misquoting his title, OPP, very senior guy with OPP, now retired, he said there's no question that this could have been handled with the existing laws. And by the way, he's not the only person to say that. I'm not hanging my argument on one person. There's constitutional lawyers out there saying that. There's policing officers out there. Bill Blair, the government Liberal cabinet minister for emergency measures, said it 5 days before the act was invoked. He said they have more than enough laws on the books. And he was quoted on the record as saying, we have an enforcement problem. We don't have a lack of laws problem. So Bill Blair, unfortunately, people aren't remembering that, but Bill Blair was the best evidence of all why it wasn't necessary for the emergency, for the invocation of the act. And I just deeply believe, I can't prove it, I just deeply believe that this is going to be, it is being challenged in the courts. That's already on the record. The Civil Liberties and the Constitutional Foundation, two separate groups, are challenging it. There's others challenging it. And I just deeply believe that there is going to be, it's going to go up, get litigated all the way to the Supreme Court. It's going to take several years, maybe 5, 6, 7 years, I don't know. And I think it's going to set down a new constitutional precedent in the same class and category as the very famous Ron Corelli and Duplessis. And I think it's going to ruin Mr. Trudeau's reputation ultimately. It'll be one of those slow-motion train wrecks that happen years later. I mean, that decision, Ron Corelli Duplessis, absolutely destroyed Premier Duplessis' reputation basically forever in the Canadian history books and the annals of Canadian public policy. And I think that there will be some landmark decision, either whether it's on the invocation of the act itself or it was the seizing of bank accounts without a court order. I think there's going to be, I just can't believe that any superior court, the Supreme Court, can legitimize and say, yes, this was legal.
Well, I guess one of the things I struggle with is it says right in the act that the crisis can't be dealt with under any other law that already exists.
That's an awfully high standard, and I can't see how they can meet that standard. It's such a high standard. I think it's essentially impossible. Well,
especially since the Ambassador Bridge blockade was ended without using any powers in the Emergencies
And again,
Act.
The courts, and I'm talking the superior courts now, not the junior courts or whatever we call the lower courts.
The lower courts.
They are very conscious of their lawmaking powers, because they do have lawmaking powers, and they're very conscious of this whole question of civil liberties and balance between the rights of citizens and governments and so forth. And there's a long history of the Supreme Court ruling in ways that were very, very critical of the government decision. This will not be the first time in Canadian history that the Supreme Court has ruled in such a manner. So I can't predict it. I'm not a lawyer, but I am just deeply convinced that down the road, years to come from now, from whenever it takes as it works its way through, that there will be a decision and ultimately delivered, and it's going to be very critical and condemn the acts of this government. But of course, they'll all be long gone. They won't be there, 5 or 7 years from now, but they'll still be around, as people, as citizens.
Sure. Okay. Let's move along. We have a few more things. What do you think of this idea that Mayor Watson has? Any seized vehicles should be sold and the proceeds go to the city to help offset some of the costs of this protest. What do you think?
I just deeply hope he doesn't. We have there's a great column today in the Post or yesterday saying that the politicians don't have a clue as to what is
Kelly
going.
McFarland.
Thank you, Kelly McFarland. Yeah. And I think he's absolutely right. There are deeper forces at play. Ross Douthat wrote this marvelous column in the New York Times on a Sunday, and Frank Graves wrote an op-ed in the Toronto Star with Michael Valpey, the former significantly left-of-center Globe and Mail journalist who's now retired, and they were looking at the protesters. They were all saying something very similar, that there's some real resentment here of people who have been left behind and disenfranchised. They weren't trying to legitimize the law-breaking. I'm not either. I'm simply saying we have to think more strategically, something that Mayor Watson I don't think is capable of, to be quite frank. And I'm being very honest when I said he's right down in the weeds about how can I sell a truck or 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 to throw some money into the city coffers.
Right.
Like he's very mechanical, right down at that level. All this will do is make things worse. And I quote, sorry, I'm full of quotes today. John Maynard Keynes wrote this brilliant paper in 1919. 1 year after the First World War, about the Treaty of Versailles. And, it was an amazing quote of his. He said the Treaty of Versailles that imposed all kinds of penalties and punishments on the Germans in the treaty for the First World War, he said the treaty was, quote, abhorrent and detestable, both morally wrong and foolish. By crippling the economies of the defeated powers, they would ensure the next world war. He wrote that in 1919. He was absolutely correct. In other words, the last thing we need is malice and saying, let's go screw them into the ground now. We've already taken away their bank accounts. Now let's go take away their trucks so they can't make any money and make them really, really, really angry. Mayor Watson just doesn't connect these dots. I hope someone around him is more prudent and responsible and mature and says, no. Let's start binding.
You have watched City Council, right? It's not a bastion of prudence.
Well, it's just let's it's over now. Let's go for something that's not driven by malice.
Malice, okay.
We want something. Let's be a little bit more Lincoln-esque, if that's possible. I don't know if it's possible.
Like if they're down, you don't want to step on their neck.
We don't have to step on their necks, spit in their face, kick them in the head. That there's things we just don't need to do in this society. And even no matter how angry we are at what they did, there's no need to grind them into the ground. That was Keynes' point about the Germans in 1919. And I'm not saying that this is the Second World War. I'm just saying people who have been defeated can get very bitter twisted. These words are in our language, in our vocabulary. So what Jim is saying, let's make these people angrier and more upset at the body politic of our country. And I just don't think that that's wise. It's not statesmanlike. Okay. It's not prudent. It's not mature.
All right. Okay. Thank you. We'll talk next week.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, very, very much appreciated, as always. Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University with us every Tuesday morning. We do the Talkback Hour every morning between 10 and 11, so that's coming right up. Your calls are most welcome. Right now, the Emergencies Act passed through the House of Commons last night. What do you think of that? Why don't we start there? 750-1310 after the news. This is City News.
WW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, February 22nd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, -9 degrees. In Smiths Falls, -8. Still under a freezing rain warning. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Tamara Litch, one of the leading organizers behind protests against the COVID-19 restrictions at Parliament Hill, has been denied bail. An Ontario court judge issued that decision this morning at the Elgin Street Courthouse, saying she believed there was a substantial likelihood Litch would reoffend if she were released. A separate bail hearing is scheduled this morning for fellow protest organizer Pat King. Litch was arrested last Thursday, charged with counseling to commit mischief, and promised during a bail hearing on Saturday to give up her advocacy of the protest and return to Alberta. The mayor will preside over a council meeting tomorrow, which will likely feature more acrimony. Not only the handling from the city perspective of the occupation downtown, but the changes at Police Services Board. There's been some criticism by some over the mayor's handling of the downtown blockade. Jim Watson tells the Rob Snow Show he can't get wrapped up in squabbling.
It's fine to get sidetracked by, debates and squabbles at City Council or up on the Hill or at Queen's Park. But my focus and preoccupation is what can we do to ensure this never happens again? How do we learn the lessons? And how do we move on to support those businesses that have suffered?
As for the Police Services Board, which ousted Diane Deans as chair and elected Eli L. Shantiri, Watson says that councillor has 12 years of experience in that board, and that brings a sense of relief. City News Time 10:02. Now your forecast with weather specialist Denise Andriacci.
A cloudy start with some ice pellets changing to freezing rain and rain. 15 to 25 millimeters is what we're expecting for the nation's capital. Through Smiths Falls and Ottawa, freezing rain warnings in place. We are going to begin with the threat of freezing rain before we change over to straight rain showers. We are seeing temperatures climb throughout the day as well. So the morning and early afternoon temperatures colder than they're going to be later this evening and even overnight. Today, the daytime high for Ottawa is near 6.
And right now, -9 degrees in Ottawa, -8 in Smiths Falls. You don't have to pay for the licensing of your car from the middle of March on. License plate stickers are going the way of the dodo.
We are eliminating license plate renewal fees and scrapping the requirement to have license plate sticker for passenger vehicles, light-duty trucks, motorcycles, and mopeds.
Premier Doug Ford says this is retroactive, actually, to March of 2020. Refunds are going to be issued starting late next month into April for anyone who has paid sticker fees for their vehicles since March of 2020. If you have moved recently, the Premier says make sure your new address is registered at ontario.ca/address change. Now, legislators have returned for the last few weeks of the session at Queen's Park. The provincial election is set for June. Party leaders say pandemic recovery and affordability will be among their top priorities. Also expected, the government's annual budget that will likely give an early look at the PC's re-election platform. The spending plan is due before the end of March. That might include some promised tax cuts. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Last night, the House of Commons voted in favor of using the Emergencies Act to deal with these anti-mandate protests. Do you agree or disagree with the use of the Emergencies Act? Agree or disagree, and we'll see where the conversation takes us this hour. 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Mark in Ottawa, you're on City News. Good morning,
Disagree.
Mark. Disagree. Why is
First of all, to the degree that it was made a vote of confidence in the government, then there was an element of blackmail there. Because if you didn't support it, you would force an election that nobody wanted.
Right.
Secondly,
good point.
Secondly, the fact that they were able to clear the Ambassador Bridge without this act being enforced, and even more significantly, I go back to 1990 and the Oka crisis. Brian Mulroney deployed the Army without invoking this act. And the Mohawk warriors were openly carrying around AK-47s. The crisis had begun when a Quebec provincial police officer, Marcel Lemay, had been killed. And the Mohawk warriors were a more formidable presence than the protesters on Wellington Street. The idea that because the police action began at the same time as the act, I'm afraid has created the impression among Canadians that the act was an essential prerequisite for the police action. That's simply not the case. We've got to remember about this Prime Minister that he's the fellow who began this pandemic crisis with an attempt to sneak past Parliament a provision which would allow the government to spend money without parliamentary oversight until the end of 2021. He's also the Prime Minister who tried to pressure his Justice Minister to get a deferred prosecution agreement
for SNC-Lavalin. Yeah. So you're troubled by it.
I'm not convinced it's necessary.
I'm not convinced it's necessary.
I'm also concerned that he might just try, if they're going after the funding, the temptation to block American funding for other causes he doesn't like, such as pro-life or gun rights. I'm really disappointed in Chrystia Freeland that she didn't. She's certainly no Jane Philpott or no Liz Cheney.
All right. Thank you, Mark. You've got us off to a good start here. All right, 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310, Talk Back Hour. Do you agree or disagree with the use of the Emergencies Act, which passed through the House of Commons last night in Drummond? Roger. Good morning, Roger.
Good morning, Rob.
Hi, Roger.
I totally disagree with it.
Okay, all right.
You know, it reminds me of two countries going to war, okay?
Okay.
And then they decided to have a ceasefire, and they signed a truce, and then they put in an act like that. And that's basically what this is about.
Okay.
Like, you know, Rob, I know there's been a lot of comment about what Trudeau, how he fanned the flames and everything. We all know that, you know. But, you know, these truckers, when they came down, there was plenty of warning. Why couldn't we have such a so-called elaborate security system? Why didn't they direct these truckers to all the park and rides for like OC Transpo, seeing that a lot of people aren't using the buses, and say you can park here and then you can go downtown, you can stay there till hell freezes over, but your trucks stay here.
Right.
There's a failure on every account.
Right.
And you know, and Jim Watson, this guy, he agreed with this here the same way as he agreed with not funding through council some money to fight Bill C-21. This guy is looking for his little soft spot there under the Trudeau government, and he's going to get it once he leaves politics, you know.
Okay.
And Rob,
you think he's looking for a patronage appointment?
Well, he's going to get it, Rob. Everybody I talk to that wants to be honest says, yeah, well, that's what he's up for. So these are things he doesn't want to fan and ruffle any feathers with the Trudeau government, okay?
Right.
Rob, is this country really worth staying as a coast to coast, or maybe this country is not governable because it seems to be there's a lot of interest in the West that aren't being looked after. Like number one, their energy stays in the ground while we got maybe Paul Martin steamships, the tankers coming down the St. Lawrence from Saudi Arabia and all those places, Venezuela. And how many contracts does SNC-Lavalin have in those countries? And is this why our oil stays in the ground and we've got to pay what we're paying for oil now?
Okay, a little bit off the topic there, Roger.
It's not off the topic. This is what's part of the whole issue. There's nothing there for the West.
Oh, okay. In terms of national unity,
well, that's right, Rob.
I'm very concerned about the unity of the country.
You know, Rob, what happened in a country like Russia and Yugoslavia? It's obviously that different parts of those countries, they didn't agree with what was going on with the dictatorship, whatever. Yeah. So there was no reason for it to stay together. And maybe that's what's going to happen here in Canada. Because I'm wondering, when is Canada going to be treated on an equal basis?
Okay. All right, Roger. Thank you. Yeah. The heart of the question is just the kind of the mechanics of the Emergencies Act that passed through the House of Commons yesterday. That's really what I kind of want to, keep you on the straight and narrow today. Brian in the Ottawa area. Brian, you're on City News.
Yeah, hey, Rob.
Hi, Bob.
I don't really want to disclose my location. I'm afraid my bank account might be frozen.
Okay. In a triangulate.
Triangulate me.
Yeah.
This is a hideous act. It's such an egregious abuse of our rights, our constitutional rights, and it should never have even been considered for a policing issue.
Okay.
Now, if you really want to see what the international community thinks of Canada, okay, you can't read the Canadian news. You're just never going to get it. Read the U.S. news, read the European news, and see what they think about it. They think this is almost something like communist China or North Korea. And you know what? In essence, it is.
Well, I wouldn't say we're communist China or North Korea right now. I mean, I know the protest is over, but let's face it, the protesters had, a hot tub and were roasting a pig and had bouncy castles. It was largely, it was largely dismantled peacefully, right? Which is really, it was. I think the policing action, was done in a good way. I thought, yeah.
No, it was brutal, and it was soft-pedaled and ignored by the media. Did you see somebody getting brutalized with a rifle butt?
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah, well, you go have a look. It's right there. You don't believe the media. You look and see those videos with your own eyes, like that guy that got kneed in the kidneys. Okay? He was on the ground, and they were kneeing him in the kidneys.
Right, well...
An immigrant to Canada said, I left Eastern Europe to get away from this sort of thing.
Okay, all right.
It's brutal.
Gotcha. Brutal, and the police were brutal. Gotcha. Dave in the West End. Dave.
Oh, my goodness. How do I follow Mark and Roger and that guy you just spoke to?
Bring it on.
Oh, my goodness. Well, let's do it this way. Okay. Thank God for Professor Lee.
Okay, all right.
Because his analysis really calmed me down.
Well, it's good, Dave.
Yes,
it's good to be calm.
Yeah, it's very good. And I'd like to throw another compliment out there, if I may. Evan Solomon.
Yeah.
Evan Solomon did a fabulous job.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
He put up with a few people that weren't nice to him.
Yeah.
But all in all, he didn't do too bad, okay?
I would say so, yeah.
But now, back to the real stuff. If I called you, Rob, what Trudeau called some of these people, you'd probably hang up on me.
Yeah, I probably would. Yes, I probably would. I would, yeah.
Our politicians have reached... total incompetency. Total
incompetence, yeah.
Total incompetence. The head cop that's been giving us reports off from his microphone there.
Yes.
He's calling for revenge.
Oh, how do you see that?
Because he says
we're going to chase you down for months on end, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Exactly, Rob.
Right.
And I think some of the things that people are telling you, but you're having a hard time with it, I'm sure. But,
no, I'm not really having a hard time with it. I'm glad it's over. I'm glad it's
over too.
I'm glad nobody was really seriously hurt. I'm glad nobody was killed. Friday I was watching the coverage Friday evening, and I was really quite fearful that it could go south in a hurry.
But my last word, Rob, is that policeman, or whoever he is, I don't know his name.
The acting chief?
The acting chief.
Yeah, Steve Bell is his name.
He claims it's not over. He's going to follow it up for years.
Well, but also, Dave, the protesters say it's not over.
Well, no, it's not over until we get rid of Trudeau.
They've got a camp out in Van Cleek Hill. They've got a camp in Arn Prior. They've got a camp in Greeley, and they say it's not over.
Well,
if you're the police, how can you say it's over when the protesters are saying it's not over?
Well, because you got to be a better man.
Okay, I don't know. I thought interim Chief Bell was at least in communicating with the public. I thought he did a pretty good job. All right, that's 1 quarter down. It's the Talk Back Hour. You see how it goes. Why not be part of it? 750-1310 on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
I always knew I was going to own my own business, and I've always wanted to have a store. And I sort of figured when the right concept came together at the right time, I would move forward with that plan. And so through doing some environmental initiatives in the restaurant group that I was with prior to opening this store, it just triggered my path towards being more environmentally conscientious and wanting to make more of a difference, and hopefully encouraging, inspiring other people to want to do the same, at which point the idea for All Eco was born. I have some really fun products. I have a really wide spectrum of products. So the things we look for in terms of qualifying products are sustainably made, upcycled, recycled, zero waste, all natural, no harmful chemicals to like the environment or to our bodies. We have like fun stuff, so like really clean burning candles, lots of really natural body care and skin care. I put a real emphasis on Canadian products. I really try to support up and comers, and I always source Canada first. The refill bar is really important to me. It's really huge. I think that's been exciting as well, because I thought it was going to be a real process in convincing people that this is a better way to go. And actually it was just like right away there was a built-in affinity towards doing refill, which has been great. We closed, I think, probably we were closed down by before the second week of March. Just didn't feel we could comfortably or confidently stay open, even though I do sell essential products, like in terms of the cleaning. But we just didn't feel we could make a safe space for ourselves or our customers at that time, and especially with the information we had at the time. So we did close our doors, at which point I did not have a website, because that was I hadn't even scheduled myself to have a website at that point. So that was sort of like full speed moving towards that and trying to drive the business, at the same time still get myself on the map because I was so new. So during that time, as we were building the website, we were still doing a lot of video shopping and private shopping, online shopping, like online phone, text. Any way I could do business, I was doing it. And there was really a nice show of support for my business during that time, which was really, really encouraging. And now, we are fully set up online too.
It's time to talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Agree or disagree on the use of the Emergencies Act? And by the way, we do have a reporter that is monitoring the bail hearings of some of these protest organizers this morning. We already know that Tamara Leach, she pronounces her name Leach. That's one of the things we learned in the previous court appearance. Leach. Bail denied for her. And Pat King's bail hearing is underway right now. We'll see what happens with that. But the Emergencies Act passed through the House of Commons last night. Liberals and the Democrats voted for it. Prime Minister not there at the time of the vote, which I didn't think was a good look, given how historic the vote is. But nevertheless, Conservatives voted against it. The Bloc members voted against it. And one-time professional protester and one-time even hunger striker, Elizabeth May, voted for the Emergencies Act and voted on side with the Liberals. So there you go. What do you think of it? Let's continue here. In South Mountain, Sean, you're on City News. Sean.
Hey, Rob, how are you?
I'm good, sir. Thank you. So the Emergencies Act passed through the House. Agree or disagree with that move? What do you think?
Well, strongly disagree.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, let's be honest. The fact that Trudeau once again goes disappearing. I mean, this guy just never ceases to amaze, and the fact that this guy can have a following of any kind is laughable. But strongly disagree because we were told over and over again how Ottawa's got this top of the line security measure and so they knew that this convoy was coming, that there was many trucks coming to the city.
Yep.
And
some of them said, we're not leaving until we get what we want.
Oh yeah, and
until you end all the mandates. Yeah.
Yeah, and they let them drive right in, park wherever they wanted, take over the city. Great. I think it's funny how they bragged about having these great tools and everything, and then it's like they got a Porsche parked in the garage and they show up with a scooter. You know what I'm saying? Like they've got they had all the tools.
Right.
For God's sakes, you got the Ottawa Act. They used to be able to shut down streets for parking and for this and that.
Yeah.
For the Ottawa Senators games, they can shut
race
down
weekend, sir. Race weekend. Like take your pick.
Yeah, but for God's sakes, they can't shut down a few streets and divert parking to have foot traffic only.
Yeah.
And that would, and it just goes to show that unfortunately crap does roll downhill. It really should be rolling uphill in this situation.
Okay. All right, John. Thank you. Okay. All right. Okay. There's a free line, 750-1310. In Bell's Corners, Aaron, you're on City News. Aaron.
Hi, Rob.
What do you think of the Emergencies Act passed through the House last night?
I disagree completely.
Okay.
The Emergencies Act should not have been passed. We don't need it. If Justin Trudeau would have put on his big boy pants and started the dialogue with the truckers, then we don't need the act.
Okay. I know, Mr. Professor Lee talks about, well, he should have gone out to meet them. I don't think he should have gone out to meet him, but maybe you could have an intermediary. Like the mayor, you do some back channel talks somehow or something like that. I don't know if that was a possibility, but...
Exactly. Right. But I do want to just say I commend the police chief and the former police board, Diane Deans, for their amazing work on this operation.
Okay. So. Really you do? Or...
Yeah, I do.
Okay,
yep.
All right. So many people are being so sarcastic lately. It's I just have to sniff it out, So okay, no. You think Steve Bell and they did a good job, and the previous chief as well? Slowly, you think he was all right, or?
Slowly, I think so as well.
Yeah,
He just didn't have the resources that he needed, but. Diane Deans was doing their job, and same with interim police chief Steve Bell.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Aaron.
So,
thank you. Thank you, sir. Yep. Let's take this one here. In Ottawa, Anne, you're on City News. Anne?
Oh, hi there.
Hi,
I haven't been able to get through.
Really? Okay. We've been busy around here.
Victim of your own success.
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay, I think you can appreciate it.
What do you think of the Emergencies
Act? Ridiculously hitting a pin with a sledgehammer.
You think so? Okay.
What he did. Okay, you've interviewed Dr. Christian Loprecht, correct? Security expert, professor.
Yes, we did. Yeah, last week. Yeah.
Okay, I heard him in an interview on Roy Green a couple of weeks ago, and he said this is ridiculous. Trudeau could have sent 8,000 RCMP officers to Ottawa to help them deal with it, and he didn't. And he could have done that after 1 week. Okay, we were fed up. We wanted them to go, right?
Right.
He could easily have done that. There's 18,000 RCMP officers in Canada. Sure. A lot of people don't realize that. That option was never on the table, and it should have been. And I mean, he was asking for police officers, RCMP, whatever. And you have to do this. Oh, and then meanwhile, has anyone mentioned the Coastal Gas Link, the ruckus that was caused there by protesters in BC on the weekend? Over $1 million damage, and they were threatening the workers with hatchets, for heaven's sakes. And then you see this. Like, it's enough. I mean, I saw one mention of it on CTV in the media, very little else. And I mean, this is why people are starting to go, where are we? What is our media doing? It's like they're only printing good stuff on Trudeau. Like, what is this?
Okay.
I mean, if you're providing news, you should provide all the news. And surely to God, trying to blow up a pipeline, energy infrastructure, it should be important news, correct? Like,
well, even in this invocation of the Emergencies Act, they talk about, the threat to critical infrastructure. They talk about that. So,
well,
all right.
It should be talked about a lot more, Rob. And the thing is anybody in jail from that? I didn't hear anything about that.
No, I haven't heard anything. I haven't heard about any arrests or anything. So.
Well, and we're hearing about, we'll pummel these trucker protesters, and I know other people have infiltrated, but you know what? Well, a lot of us are happy to see them. They're trying to shut it down, but still, a lot of us are in sympathy that, wait a second, this was not right. I mean, you have to be the Prime Minister for all Canadians, not just the ones who voted for you, which is precious little compared to the whole of Canada. So, this is just ridiculous. But ladies at my gym, typical Liberals, oh yeah, he had to do that. He had no choice.
Well, it has a lot of support. It does, Ann. It does. It has more support than, say, the popular support of the Liberal Party right now, which, like the Conservatives, is kind of like stuck at 29-30%. But nevertheless, Mike in Ottawa. Mike.
Yes, Rob. Thanks for taking my call.
Pleasure,
I'll try
sir.
to make it short there.
Sure, yeah.
3 years ago, Trudeau tried to get into the Canadians' bank accounts through the Statistics Canada. Remember that? This is a way around it. This is to silence his critics. I told you, I phoned in a few weeks ago. I live on $972.
Yes, so on ODSP, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
The same toilet paper and orange juice that used to cost me $9 cost me $17 now.
Oh my gosh.
The same block of cheese I bought for the last 5 years at Fresco for $5 is now $6.
Yes.
I had a tomato the other day. First tomato I've had in I don't know how long. Okay, a tomato sandwich.
Right.
Okay. Justin Trudeau, this is disgusting. This is just him trying to avoid what should have been done in the first place and talk to Canadians. Not just the Canadians that agree with him, but everyone in Canada from coast to coast to coast.
Okay. Wait till you go and fill up that Mustang that you haven't been able to drive.
My Mustang is parked in the garage.
I know, but wait till you fill it up.
My birthday is on Thursday.
Okay.
Do I have to go get a sticker? Because I don't have the $120 to put my sticker on my car on my birthday.
No, it's going to be retroactive anyway. It's going to be retroactive, so they might be sending you some money.
$120 and then wait for a refund?
No, I believe you don't have to do that.
Thank God for Doug Ford.
All right. Okay.
I disagree with Doug Ford supporting Trudeau with the Emergencies Act. I lived through Pierre Trudeau 1. I was 10 years old during the War Measures Act. People don't realize that the RCMP is a military police. Okay, people don't understand that. Me and my sister have been trying. The Chrétien screwed the military and the RCMP out of part of their pensions. We've been fighting for years to try and get it. There's a class action lawsuit. Nothing gets done on that.
All right. I don't know much about that, Mike, and I'm out of time, so I'm going to have to run here. But all the best to you, sir. All the best to you. You help put so many problems into perspective for us. Thank you for your time. Halftime here, though, on the Talkback Hour. The news is coming up. We're watching bail hearings. That's one of the news stories that we're watching. Bail hearings for some of the protest organizers. One has concluded and another one is underway. We'll let you know what's going on with that here on City News.
News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, February 22nd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, it's minus 9 degrees. Make that minus 8 in Smiths Falls. Right now, it's minus 7. And here's what's making news this hour. Bail denied. One of the organizers of the protest in Ottawa has been denied bail. That is Tamara Litch. Told by the judge she wasn't convinced she would abide by the conditions that were being set out, mainly to leave Ottawa and return home to Alberta. So Litch will remain in custody. A separate bail hearing is scheduled today for another of the organizers, Pat King. Ottawa Mayor says he believes the crisis is not over yet, with protesters waiting at camps outside the city for a possible return to the downtown. So there are checkpoints still up leading into Ottawa. And the mayor says, in the meantime, measures to address helping businesses affected by this downtown shutdown will be discussed at City Council tomorrow. You won't have to pay for the licensing of your car anymore. The fee for the license plate sticker is leaving. Premier Ford says this is retroactive, actually, to March of 2020. Refunds are going to be issued starting in late March this year into April for anyone who has paid a sticker fee for their vehicles since March of 2020. Latest COVID numbers from the province show 1,038 people in hospital, 319 of them in the ICU. There have also been another 24 deaths reported in the last day. City News Time, 10:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Last night, the House of Commons voted to pass the Emergencies Act to, the government says, deal with anti-mandate protests, asking if you agree or disagree with the use of the Emergencies Act. The Trudeau Liberals defend the use of this never-before-used legislation because they say the threat still exists. That there's the threat of more blockades. There's the threat of blockades at key border crossings, like the ones we saw in Windsor and Coutts, Alberta, Emerson, Manitoba. And they say there's the potential, that's a word that's in the gazetted measures, the potential that could harm Canada's economy. So that's how they're defending it. I don't really see it that way. I have not really been a big fan of the idea of using the Emergencies Act since it was rumored to be under consideration, because the legislation very rightly comes with a high threshold to meet. And I wasn't really convinced then, and I'm not really convinced now that the legislation is really what's needed to deal with these challenges. One of the prerequisites is that there has to be no other law that can deal with the nature of the emergency. And I just don't think that's the case here. The government says that the measures are going to be targeted and temporary. And the New Democrats say, well, we'll pull our support at the first sign of abuse of these measures. But, I just prefer not to give government new powers to abuse in the first place. That's just me. And the government also maintains that a key part of the new Emergencies Act powers are the new financial powers. But again, it's hard to see why such extraordinary measures were needed on the financial side, because it was the provincial government's move to go to court that shut down the Give, Send, Go fundraiser. That was a provincial move. The provincial government went to court and got that done. GoFundMe shut down the fundraiser basically in and of itself. And wasn't it? It was like close to $20 million and all that was raised among those two fundraisers. Now maybe they want to go after crypto assets and they need emergency powers to do that. I don't know. The language in the Gazette, very vague, like it's clear as mud. But there is, look, I'm concerned about what could be going on at these base camps, like in the rural parts of our region, east and west and south of Ottawa. And I have concerns about what might be going on there. I worry that something nefarious might be going on there. And there, I just have to have faith in law enforcement and, I guess, intelligence agencies, that they have a handle on what's going on, or aware of what's going on. That's kind of where I am this morning on a Tuesday morning. I think whatever protests remain in Ottawa now, it's more at the kind of like minor nuisance level now, isn't it? It's not really a nationwide emergency, is it? 750-1310, 750-1310. Second half of the Talkback Hour underway. Chris in Brockville. Chris.
Hey, Rob. Good morning.
Hi, Chris. What do you think of the Emergencies Act getting through the House last night?
I am for it in a targeted way,
All right.
and I'll tell you why. And we talked last week about people not listening. And it's funny, people listen a certain way. They interpret things a certain way. This has nothing to do with Trudeau and tomatoes. This has nothing to do with Trudeau and pipeline. This has nothing, frankly, to do with Trudeau. Were there screw-ups? Yes, and there's a bunch of blame to be applied that this could have been prevented on day zero. But you take politicians out of the way for a second. When you have a crisis of, an entire shutdown of the capital city, of Canada, you have to take some measures. And if the current way to do it is not working, we should fix it. But right now, the only way to fix it is an extreme measure of saying, look, cut through all the bullshit of politics, provincial, federal, all those things. Okay, let's just get it done. Yeah. We all wanted to get it done. So you needed an accelerant to get it done. So that's where things like Emergency Act allow the green light to cut through the red tape, all the political red tape. And it's a shame we have red tape, but it does exist, and we should fix it later or afterwards in our post-reviews. Having said that, now, today, yes, it's a nuisance downtown. You don't need an emergency act to solve the smaller issues that are now cropping up. Those are handled at a town level, provincial level, etc. No problem.
Okay.
The financial part is what this is correctly about. In order to say we're going to deny a bail, or in order to say we're going to chase crypto, that are brand new threads that nobody really has laws on how to do, in order to say we're going to freeze those accounts until we figure it out, because we don't want those people that should have been penalized to go and sell their truck, and now there's no recourse, et cetera, et cetera. So you have to be able to lock it down. And last point, Rob, it is not correct for us taxpayers to be paying the bill for all the crap that these guys have created. Okay? So, yes, we do need to retract it. And one more point, Rob. On the economic scale, does it hurt us as a nation? Yes, it does. Our U.S. to Canadian currency exchange rates, our supply chain, those all get impacted at a macro level. Okay, and if you're trying to do business across border, or if you're trying to move across borders, you are going to be penalized for this bad reputation that caused an economic impact. The supply chain is the scenario. What caused it? The truckers' blockades. It does have a negative impact economically on all of us.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, I don't really have time to address all of what you said. How you could say, well, it has nothing to do with Mr. Trudeau, and it was Mr. Trudeau's government that passed the Emergencies Act. Come on. Michelle in Canada. Michelle.
Hi, good morning, Rob.
Hi, Michelle. On the use of the Emergency Act, passed through the House last night. What do you think of that?
Totally disagree. And then just upon hearing that Trudeau wasn't even there for the vote, come on, really?
That's the buzz, yeah.
That's absolutely ridiculous. It's like when he left during the question period, there was questions being directed to him, and he walks out as they're asking questions. He's just not wanting to face the music here.
Right.
2 years ago, there was Indigenous people blocking rail lines and highways. CN Rail basically had to cut off their operations across the country. There was Trudeau's response to that. Respectful dialogue is the path forward. Ian Lee was right. He should have gone out there at some point early in the blockade 3 weeks ago and talked to them. Okay. Bail denied to Leach.
Leach, yeah.
Accused murderers get bail. Like, come on, that's absolutely ridiculous. Like, especially the alleged gunman that shot the Toronto police officer last year.
The justice overhearing the bail case today said there is a substantial risk that she will engage in other illegal behavior or counsel others to do so.
Okay, well, they were on. The protesters were there for 3 weeks. No violence, no injuries. The only time there was somebody injured, and there was somebody injured, they were trampled by a horse on Saturday, and that's when the police brought the horses in. So she's an elderly woman who, was standing there, and they were holding the line, and the horses come in, and she got trampled and is in hospital with an injured shoulder and other injuries. So yes, there were people injured, but it wasn't until the police came in.
Okay.
So the fact that, they're using this excuse that she could be inciting other... There wasn't violence. There was no inciting violence. 3 weeks they demonstrated it, that they could be holding a peaceful protest for 3 weeks.
So what? There should be no consequences? Nobody should face any consequences?
Well, nobody faced any consequences with...
For shutting down the downtown? For shutting down the downtown? For closing all of those businesses?
They were shutting... No, they could have opened up on their own.
They could have. They could have if they wanted to be...
A lot of money.
If they wanted to be yelled at and spat on and bullied and harassed, I suppose. Is that the kind of environment you would want to go to work in, Michelle?
That was from the truckers. That was from some of the others.
Oh, yeah, from some of the others. Yeah, it's always the others. Yeah, we go around in circles again. David in Lowertown. David.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, David.
I just want the Emergencies Act bill was only passed last night, right?
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
So how were the bank accounts? How were they?
The way it was explained to me, as soon as it was gazetted, in other words, published by the legislature, by the Parliament, then those measures came into effect. And then I know it seems kind of counterintuitive, like you would think there would have to be a vote, right? But then they have to have a vote to keep them in effect for 30 days. And then there's another part of the legislation that says if 20 members of Parliament sign a petition, they can have another vote to get rid of the act. Again, which is what the Conservatives tried to do yesterday, but now the House doesn't sit this week, so they won't deal with that matter until next week when the House is back. So that's kind of how it works. That's how it was explained to me by...
Sounds like something out of China.
Well, I don't know if it's something... It's actually the way it was done up by the government of Brian Mulroney. So if you want to blame somebody, you blame it on Mr. Mulroney, I guess. It was his government that brought it in. Now, it's never been used before. But and you disagree with it, obviously.
Well, I don't think it was the right thing. It was too heavy-handed.
Well, I guess at this point, what's the emergency? That's what I'm asking myself. Like, go to that question. What's the emergency?
Yeah.
Right now, here on Tuesday morning, what's the emergency? We've got sporadic protests throughout the downtown core in various places, like down by the Sir John A. Macdonald Parkway near the War Museum. A little protest there. On Booth Street, a little protest there. Nothing in Coots, nothing in Emerson. There was a pretty nasty protest in British Columbia over the weekend, but... what do we need this for?
Yeah, to me, the denying of bail this morning to the, I'm sure Pat King will be denied as well.
Yeah. Is there any update on that, David? What's going on with Pat King? I'm just asking my producer if that's been, don't see anything there, but okay. Yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, I was surprised that she was denied bail, but...
It comes off more of a revenge thing.
Maybe, David. Yep, thank you. Maybe that's how it looks. I'm not saying that's what it is, but, maybe that's the perception for some people. We'll be back with John. Mike is in downtown Ottawa. Helen's in Westboro. Calls from all across the region, actually. So we'll get to those calls right after this on City News.
When it came to opening the business, because I was so young, there was a lot that I didn't know about management, financial management, management of people, all around management, I think is the word that I always come back to. I think that I always had a passion, and I knew that I wanted to create a space for people to get their hair done, but I had no idea, even having studied business management, what it really took to open a business as well as sustain a successful business. So in 2014, I was actually working with Angela Sutcliffe. She was my business coach at the time, and she was like, what's your niche? Like, what separates you from other salons? And when we started to really dig, it was the curls. It was the fact that we work with all curl types: curly, kinky, wavy, coily, which is how we identify our curl types. And then you have straight hair as well, of course. But you know, more than 70% of the world has some sort of curl pattern to their hair. And we just realized that that was not being addressed. It wasn't something we learned about in school. So that's, I went to the States and I traveled all over to kind of gain the information that I have now to be able to share it with our clients and as well as with other stylists. So in March, when it came, I thought it was gonna last, a week, 2 weeks, through, I think it started off at 2 weeks. And I was like, cool, I have 2 weeks to just relax, that's fine. So I was actually in a position where I was not happy, so to say, but I was a little bit happy, to be honest, just because of what I was experiencing personally. Now, when that extension started to happen, it was not a great feeling. It was very uncomfortable not knowing how I was going to support myself financially. So I'm so excited about the Academy. It's something that I started, and I launched it during the pandemic. So I've been teaching for a number of years. I've been educating for a number of years. I educated at Algonquin. I've educated at Versailles Hair Academy. And I've also educated in my own space, in this space and my old space up on Green Bank. And so it was just a continuum of what, I've been doing for these years. When we have a client in our chair, it's not just about making your hair look great. It's about how do you go home and take what we've just taught you and emulate that. So now with a world where people want to quote unquote be diverse and inclusive, what does that really look like in a salon setting? And for me, it looks like being able to invite any curl type, any hair type really, because I can take care of straight hair types just as well as, I can take care of curls. And we cater to all curl types regardless of what you look like on the outside, we got you.
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
There's some great guests coming up in the final hour of the program, by the way. Michael Taube. Michael Taube has an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal. Boy, is he really hitting his stride or what? As a syndicated columnist, I've read him recently in the National Post and the Washington Post, and now the Wall Street Journal. Some of the great newspapers, the Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, it's great stuff. Jeffrey Johnston writes about international affairs for the Kingston Whig Standard. And he's going to join us, and we're going to talk about Russia and Ukraine. And Barry Mclaughlin, our expert in communication strategy and crisis communications, and certainly we've had our fill of that recently, haven't we? He's senior partner, transformleaders.ca, senior fellow with the Masters of Political Management program at Carleton University. And he's going to join us as well. And Peter Fraser on everything that's going on with your money, because it's, it's not Money Monday, but we would usually do Money Monday yesterday. But so Peter's agreed to join us this morning. That's all coming up in the final hour of the Rob Snow Show. We're talking about the Emergencies Act. It passed through the House of Commons last night to deal with these anti-mandate protests. John in Gatineau. Good morning, John.
Good morning. How are you, Rob?
I'm good, John. How are you?
I'm okay.
You're okay. Okay, that's good.
Look,
that's good.
I'm trying to answer your question with regards to my feelings about the
use,
Act, and whenever I'm faced with something that I guess is creating an emotional reaction to me, because the emotional reaction I have is one of shame, I'm trying to understand why. So, as much as I would like to do almost anything, including sticking needles in my eyes, I actually listened to the parliamentary debate for the last 4 days.
Oh, you did? Wow. Holy cow.
scary. And so anyway, I mean, I can't speak to the resources that were required, police from BC to Halifax. I can't speak to corporate freezings of fund accounts because in a way I can understand an argument for that. I just cannot wrap my head around freezing personal accounts who simply are deemed to accused to participate. Well, I guess accused in the court of law. So I'd like to go back as an example to this to Tamara Leach, and not today's ruling, but the court proceedings on Saturday, where she was, you know, the number on the table for bail was $5,000. She goes, yeah, I have the money, but my bank is frozen. Right. My credit cards are frozen. Yeah. Now, this is a woman that I probably could not have a conversation with.
Right.
I'm not, you know, her, and probably I could easily hear the argument that she's maybe not a model citizen.
Right.
Nevertheless, she couldn't pay a bail because her accounts were frozen, and we're yet to even get a court case. And I'm trying to understand how this is right in a democratic society.
Right. Just, right?
Just. Yeah, that's a great story. Yeah. And then I go back, so I'm trying to understand, I'm trying to see who's representing me, or who's representing, you know, anywhere from 5,000 to 18,000, and that's just an internet search as to how many people were taking part at various times in this protest.
Right. Yeah.
So 22 hours ago, I'm listening to the Prime Minister's speech. And I actually had to listen to it twice to make sure I got this right.
You are dedicated.
How many times did you hear the word listen or écouter in that speech? And the answer is 0. The other thing that was pretty telling to me was he separated truckers from frontline workers in his speech. He said truckers and frontline workers. And the final thing, which was I actually believed after he said this that the bill wasn't going to pass, because he said, if you don't vote yes, then you have distrust in the government to make, as he puts it, momentous decisions. And after that, I pretty much shut everything down because I said, well, I think actually no one does have the trust in the government to make ability decisions. So there's a very small part of this, but a very, I think, significant part of this that we have to discuss, and that's the personal accounts. And that's all I have to say.
The personal bank accounts. That's
yes,
yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. Okay. Can you pay your bail? Well, I would be able to, but they froze my bank account. Can you get out of the province? Well, I'm not allowed to fly because I don't have the vaccine. Yeah, it's all kinds of crazy. Mike is downtown Ottawa. Mike.
Rob, I heard a saying that if you create an enemy, you will have followers.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I suppose I'd have to give it some thought.
And this is exactly what they've done. First, it started with hate the mask, hate the needle. Then it goes to hate the government, hate Trudeau.
Right.
This is a smokescreen and a pretext for an attack on democracy.
You think the protest leaders have created an enemy? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Think back to the 1930s, Hitler.
Right.
The Jews.
Yeah. A unique, I'm not comfortable with that comparison. I usually, when that comes up, I usually just move along. Thank you. Helen in Westboro. Helen.
Hi, I agree
Helen.
with you on that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I was thinking, first of all, your discussion with Ian Lee was excellent, as usual.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank him. Next time
you
see him.
Both of you. But
so the Emergencies Act is got parliamentary approval now, Helen. What do you make of that?
Well, I think back to Justin's father and the War Measures Act.
Right.
And then I think of Justin and the Emergency Act.
Yeah.
And Justin is certainly a chip off the old block, but not his father, his mother.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, no,
Right.
I think it's overkill.
Overkill. Okay.
Overkill, absolutely, and it's this thing of seizing.
The FLQ before the War Measures Act, there was like a 6-year reign of terror by the FLQ.
Yeah.
We forget about the mailboxes blowing up. They killed a woman in Ottawa in a bombing.
Yeah.
They blew up the stock exchange, and then they started doing the kidnappings, right?
And then they negotiated with them and let some of the...
let them go to Cuba, right? They went to Cuba.
Exactly.
Yeah, some of them went to Cuba.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah.
That's one other thing that really bothers me about all this is the way that people speak so disparagingly of the truckers.
Now they do. Well,
they did. Like last week, you had a caller on. I don't remember what his term was, but it was awful. And there was a fellow on the television news that called, said it was like an episode of Duck Dynasty, and he looked like he was a middle manager in some whatever. If I was ever needing any help from anybody, I wouldn't go to somebody that looks like a bureaucrat that works from home in his pajamas. I'd go to one of the truckers who'd know what they're doing.
I see. Okay. All right. Or anyway, somebody who makes duck calls for a living, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
They did.
Anyway,
they did very well.
Speaking of duck calls, I have a tendency of breaking out into song, and I promise I won't sing.
Okay.
But I did think of a song that reminded me of Justin. Okay.
All right.
And it's to the tune of Flying Purple People Eater.
Right. Okay.
He's a long-haired, weak-jawed, lying, working people hater. And he sure looks dumb to me.
Gosh, Ellen, I don't know how long you work on those, but...
it just comes to me.
They just come to you. Okay. All right. Okay. We got to go, Helen. We got to go. We're right at a time. Can't even get to everybody's call today. Incredible. We'll do it again tomorrow. We do the Talk Pack Hour every day between 10 and 11 o'clock at 750-1310. Coming up right after the 11 o'clock news. Speaking of Pierre Trudeau and Justin Trudeau, that is very much at the heart of the latest column from former Harper speechwriter and syndicated columnist Michael Taube. And he'll explain his thinking coming up next on The Rob Snow Show on City News.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, February 22nd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, -8, -7 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. An Ontario judge has denied bail to one of the organizers of the anti-vaccine mandate protest in Ottawa. Here's City News Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney.
Convoy protest organizer Tamara Leach will be remaining in custody as she awaits her trial on her mischief and counsel to mischief charges. The justice in this case says she believes there is a substantial risk that Leach will either engage in illegal behavior or counsel others to do so should she be released. The justice says she is not persuaded or impressed by the testimony of Ms. Leach or her husband, who had applied to be her surety. The justice also raising concerns about the finances of the couple. The fact that her husband, Dwayne, was not able to provide many details about how he was able to get to Ottawa, only saying it was on a private jet owned by someone named Joseph. The justice also concerned about the source of the financing for the bond that the couple had put forward in order to get her bail. We're now awaiting the bail hearing for another organizer, Pat King. Ms. Leach has been ordered not to communicate with any of the other organizers during her time in custody. Cormac McSweeney, City News at the Ottawa Courthouse.
City News time 11:01. Now, Ottawa's downtown secure zone will remain in place for now. A mayor says the crisis is not over yet. Here's City News reporter Jason White.
While he is relieved the trucks are gone from Wellington Street, the mayor is casting a wary eye to convoy members currently biding their time outside the secure zone.
Some members of Parliament seem to think the crisis is over. It isn't.
Mayor Jim Watson tells the Rob Snow Show he figures the occupation has cost the city more than $20 million for things like policing and the cleanup after. And he's been talking with the province and the feds
about the fact that we're keeping track of all of the costs, and we're going to need their support to pay the bill.
Watson says he hopes people will go downtown and frequent businesses affected by the occupation, but adds the city is working on some relief programs scheduled to go to City Council tomorrow. Jason White, City News.
City News time, 11:02. And now your forecast. We are under a freezing rain warning, and that will take effect at some point this afternoon. We're expecting a band of freezing rain through the late afternoon and into this evening and overnight as well. The ice pellets expected to start this afternoon. Temperatures are expected to continue rising tonight as freezing rain changes over to periods of rain, and temperatures actually drop to -3. Right now, it's -8 in Ottawa, -7 in Smiths Falls. Latest COVID-19 numbers from the province show 1,038 people in hospital and 319 of them are in the ICU. There have also been another 24 deaths reported. 1,282 new cases of COVID province-wide. 103 of them are in Ottawa, 25 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, 9 in Eastern Ontario, and 4 in Renfrew. A 20-year-old woman, the latest homicide victim in Ottawa. Police were called to the General Hospital last night just after 6. The patient died about an hour and a half after that from injuries from gunshots. The vehicle which brought the woman to hospital left immediately but was found nearby. The victim identified as 20-year-old Sahur Yar. Anyone with any information is asked to contact Ottawa Police. And Premier Doug Ford says Ontario is eliminating license plate renewal fees and the requirement for drivers to have a sticker effective on March 13th. Ford says his government will include refunds for the past couple of years in the legislation.
We're refunding all license plate sticker fees paid since March 2020. This means over 7.5 million vehicle owners can expect a refund.
And what does that add up to? $1.1 billion a year in lost revenue for Ontario. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
All right. So the Ontario legislature is back for the first time in a few months. And that means a question period. They have question period in the mornings at Queen's Park. And Andrea Horvath asked about everything from the protests here in Ottawa to the price of gas. And now she's talking about hydro bills. This is the leader of the opposition
in this province each and every year. So my question is, why did this premier outright break his promise to reduce electricity rates for the people of Ontario by 12%?
From the House Leader. Again, thank you, Mr. Speaker. What the FAO did say was that the price of electricity was coming down for the people of the province of Ontario. What he also highlighted, Mr. Speaker, was that the contracts that we had to take over, that we had to assume, supported every step of the way by the leader of the opposition. These high price for electricity, for power that we didn't need, that we could not afford. Again, Mr. Speaker, all in this attempt at reducing greenhouse gas emissions, when we knew that the reason we had the cleanest electricity sector in North America was because of the hardworking men and women who work in our nuclear sector, Mr. Speaker. That is what happened. That is why we were able to bring that down. And because of the hard work of our government.
A little bit of what the Ontario question period sounds like right now. Pretty sparse place for the first day back in a few months for the Ontario legislature. And it'll be a quick session, and then it's off and running for the election campaign. Coming up to 11:07 as we enter the final hour of this morning's Rob Snow Show here on City News. Welcome back, syndicated columnist is most recent for the Wall Street Journal. Michael Taube is back with us. Michael Taube. Good morning, Michael.
Well, to follow the theme of the earlier thing, good morning, Mr. Speaker. How are you?
It's really nice to hear from you again, boy. And congratulations appearing in the Wall Street Journal. That's really nice.
Well, thank you. No, I actually, and not to toot my own horn, I've actually been appearing there on a near monthly basis for several years. But it's interesting how certain topics catch people's eyes. There's no question of that.
Yeah. So, boy, and you don't hold back on Mr. Trudeau. You say he's acted like a tin pot dictator. What makes you say that?
No, without question. No, I'm not holding back. And quite frankly, this is the beginning of, I think, several themes of things I'm going to write and talk about where I'm going to try to push it a little bit more, because I think we have dealt with enough with Justin Trudeau the past 6 years, and the fact that Canadians have decided, in a democratic fashion, to elect his government 3 times, with 2 minorities, mind you, finishing second in the popular vote those 2 times. He does not have the confidence of this country. Now, Liberal supporters and Liberal talking heads and others will come on your show, other shows, television, they'll write columns or op-eds, and they'll say the opposite. And they'll look and say, well, look, Maru polling shows that, roughly 2/3 of Canadians were supportive of the Emergencies Act. They believe in this Prime Minister. They believe in his philosophy. I don't really think it is that, Rob, quite frankly. I can't prove it, but I think it's more frustration than anything else. I think people are just sick and tired of watching this. Watching the domestic news coverage, watching the international news coverage, all virtually negative, watching the various protests occur in Ottawa, cities like mine, Toronto, and elsewhere, and watching the blockades on places like the Ambassador Bridge in Windsor, Ontario, etc. I think Canadians were just getting fed up. They were fed up with everything. They were fed up with the focus. They were fed up that the news cycle was just not leaving this country, and they just wanted an end to it.
I don't care what it takes, and if it takes the Emergencies Act, so be it, in other words, kind of thing.
Pretty much. And look, we live in a democracy. That's fine. If people want to believe that, I'm not saying they don't have the right to think that way, but it's not the right strategy to look at. But in terms of being a tin pot dictator, I mean, very quickly, and people can obviously read my piece in the Wall Street Journal if they want, but to sum it up, you look at it from start to finish. I mean, to begin with, he refused to meet with any of the organizers, or at the very least, which would have been easier, the protesters who were there, who were from all parts of the country, coast to coast to coast, and they represented all walks of life. if nothing else, the Prime Minister or some of his senior cabinet ministers, Rob, could have gone to meet with him, to speak with him, not to necessarily build a bridge or change people's perceptions about the Trudeau's leadership, but to at least show that they had some semblance of interest, even if it was nonsensical, that they just wanted to listen to people, hear their grievances, understand what they're talking about, and maybe some of the tension that we've seen over the past few weeks in your city of Ottawa could have been lowered. And then the problem also was that when Mr. Trudeau came out of hiding every so often, and quite frankly, if he wasn't in hiding, he gave so much room to people on the right and people on the left to critique him for the fact that he just wasn't around. When he finally came out to announce the Emergencies Act and otherwise, he would also then come out and make awful comments about the group that was obviously opposing him, calling the Freedom Convoy protesters a small fringe minority who held unacceptable views. His tete-a-tete with Melissa Lantsman, the Conservative MP, which I believe I talked about with you, and I'm sure you've talked about with others, was a classic example of someone who had not only lost the narrative and lost the story, but the fact that he stood up and walked out of the House of Commons while she was asking for an apology on her behalf and on behalf of all members of Parliament was telling in itself. And you can obviously go to the Emergencies Act as well, which I sort of compared to the War Measures Act in the sense that the only Prime Minister to ever bring in the War Measures Act during peacetime was Pierre Elliott Trudeau, Mr. Justin Trudeau's father. And the fact that the two of them were actually rather different in the sense that the War Measures Act was brought out simply because, you had to deal with a terrorist threat, the FLQ, and the fact that they had kidnapped two individuals, including a diplomat and a Quebec minister, and that they were trying to basically save the country during a difficult period of time. It's not that you couldn't use other techniques. Of course, other techniques existed, and maybe there was a better way, but that's what they chose to do by declaring the FLQ to be a terrorist, or quasi-terrorist, if you'd like, organization on our soil, Canadian soil, and moving forward that way, versus the Emergencies Act, which was basically done for a mostly peaceful protest. There were obviously some screwballs around and some things that happened. We're not disputing any of that, but a mostly peaceful protest where, it was more of a, as the New York Times actually even called it, a nuisance, which I think is actually a pretty good description, or just a frustrating period of time for Canadians to experience. And basically, they just roll out the Emergencies Act, which, gives police obviously more power to push back the crowds and start clearing the roads. And what they did in terms of FinTrack, or the financial intelligence system, where they were freezing bank accounts of people who chose to make, in some cases, exceedingly small donations to this. Whether you agree with it or not, we live in a free society, or at least I thought so that was usually allowed, to freeze those accounts of people. And also, it creates not only an embarrassment for the individuals, there were also small business owners who probably had their bank accounts frozen, and that hurts them directly in their wallets because they have a position or hold a point of view that's different than others. I mean, if that's not what a tin pot dictator, or how a tin pot dictator handles things, I don't know what is.
Okay. So the other big news story this morning, Michael Taube, is Russia moving into eastern Ukraine.
Yeah.
This comes after a remarkable speech yesterday from Mr. Putin.
Yes.
What does he want? He waxes nostalgic about the Soviet Union. That's what he wants. He wants the return of the Soviet superpower, right?
You got it. I can almost literally end our discussion there. Absolutely. That's really what this is. And it's very simple. Why else would Vladimir Putin be interested in Ukraine? I mean, yes, we know that obviously Crimea is now part of Russia again, which was questionable, but they voted for it as well, and it was held in a proper fashion, so you can't argue it. There's a piece of Georgia and up in the north that's also now part of Russia as well. Again, it was done in a way that still people question, but you can't really sit and fight about it. But what he's doing here is he's threatening to go right into the Ukraine, and the only reason he would want it is because Ukraine is a powerful country. It would be a part of NATO right now if Mr. Putin didn't continue to object to it. we also, there's also realms of oil and gas that are important in Ukraine. The capital city of Kiev has close to 3 million people. Plus, and you said it correctly, I've said it too, and others have said it as well, Mr. Putin's vision is to rebuild the old Soviet Union piece by piece, or as many pieces as he can ultimately attain before the world says enough. And the key is here. The world is starting to say enough.
I mean, yesterday he was there would be no Ukraine without us. There would be we built Ukraine.
That's the nonsense. Yes, exactly. And that's what he keeps saying. But in fact, in reality, long before him, the reasons behind Glasnost and Perestroika was because they wanted freedom. They wanted to break away. They wanted to create their own countries. That was the logical theme behind to break away the shackles of communism. And now, unfortunately, a person who, yes, was associated with the old communist regime, but doesn't call himself one today, it's not a popular theme in Russia, is trying to rebuild it.
Okay. What a world. Thank you, Michael Taube, for helping us make sense of it. I always appreciate your time.
It's my pleasure. I hope I helped. Take good care, Rob.
Syndicated columnist and former speechwriter for Prime Minister Harper. That's Michael Taube. From the Kingston Whig Standard, international affairs columnist Jeffrey Johnston, as we explore a little more the Russia-Ukraine situation with Jeffrey Johnston coming up on City News.
This affected us big time because when, you know how we are seasoned, we have clothes for the spring, clothes for the winter. That time, lots of clothes didn't arrive on time from Europe or from here because some factory shut down. So, and this put us in an odd position. We received not all the merchandise, part of the merchandise, and people. And for us, we have to be careful, you know, especially with the virus going on. Like, did affect the business, of course, like everybody else. We're not immune, and since the government helped, you know, this did a little bit good for us too, but still affected all the sectors, especially clothing. You know, you can see big corporation affected bad because nobody was like thought it's gonna be like this. You know, earthquake might happen, we joke about it before, things might happen, but this was like a third war, but with a virus. So how to survive, that's the question, and we're doing our best to work with the mall, especially rent in a mall is very high. The government, they have certain, let's say, condition, like how many people will be in the mall or in the stores, etc. Yeah, it's a big factor, but of course, if my store has a back doors or just will be better, it will be much better. At least we can have curbside much easy because we have to shut down completely, you know? And this left a mark on us, on everybody too. People always ask me, go online. Certain things you can't go online, let's say t-shirt, certain product people don't know how to fit. But when it comes to clothing, like it's different completely. Let's say I have a customer comes, you can give him 44, but certain suit he might take 42, certain suit he might take 46. So, and how could, I mean, suit is not gonna fit the same. And I see people come back and they show me what they got online and not the same fabric. Mostly young people, but if you really wanna shop, you have to go to the store because everything will be around you. You wanna be sure the color look good, the fit will look good, especially when you spend, doesn't matter how much money, whether 300 or 2,000, you know? You have to try, you have to see what's going on. Please don't be shy, contact us. It will be a pleasure for me to take a suit or coat or anything. Like sometimes people have a funeral, they have things, they have a wedding, they don't want to come to the mall. If I get all the information, I will go and meet them at their home or their business offices. I'm gonna start doing that, you know, and this will help the business and help the people, like they're afraid to come to the mall for time being, or they're too busy at work. They cannot go anywhere at certain times, so I'm glad to do that.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Jeffrey Johnston writes about international affairs for the Kingston Whig Standard, and he's usually with us every Monday, but we were away yesterday for the Family Day long weekend. So Jeffrey's with us this morning and could not think of a better time to have his perspective this morning. Welcome back. Great to hear from you.
Good morning. The news just never stops.
Yeah. What would you say have been some of the key developments in the Russia-Ukraine story over the last, say, 24 hours, Jeffrey?
Wow, there are a lot. So I first want to get off, my main point is the least pessimistic thing I can say about all this is that we have entered a new Cold War with Russia. The more pessimistic assessment would be that Vladimir Putin, once he's done with Ukraine, will turn his attention to other areas of the world that were once under Soviet domination. And I'm thinking of allies like Poland, Lithuania, and Latvia, who are all members of NATO. And if he turns his attention to them, then that could put us into direct conflict with Putin, and we could actually be in a war with Russia, and that would be a world war. So that's very serious. One of the significant developments is that crazy speech Putin gave yesterday, and that goes back to my first point. He said in that speech that Ukraine never had its own identity, and they were never their own people, which actually is historically incorrect, because even at the time of the Russian Revolution, there was a movement within Ukraine to have their own country. And so a lot of what he said was just incorrect. He also said in that speech that it was insane. It was madness that Soviet republics were allowed to become independent. So he was basically saying none of these countries are legitimate. Well, Lithuania and Latvia were back then part of the Soviet Union. Poland was a satellite country. There are other countries like Estonia that are now independent, but were part of the Soviet Union back then. It's interesting to note that Lithuania and Estonia have come out very strong against Putin's aggression towards Ukraine. So that moves on to what Putin actually did. We know since 2014, Putin has been waging war in Ukraine. He just hasn't been sending his troops overtly in there, although there have been Russian troops in there. There have been Russian mercenaries in the Donbass region, that's the eastern part, and there were two breakaway city-states there. There was Donetsk and Luhansk, and they were also part of larger, what they call oblast regions. And one of the significant things that is happening right now, and because I'm following a lot of Ukrainian sources online, it looks like the Russians are going to recognize not just these smaller breakaway areas that are occupied by these separatists. They're also going to recognize the larger Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts in that region, which are not under control of these separatists, meaning these areas, larger areas, are controlled by the Ukrainians. And so he's going to reportedly recognize them. So that would mean these so-called Russian peacekeepers that he is sending into Donbass will actually be fighting Ukrainians for control of this area. Now, this is still the area of speculation, but you don't amass nearly 200,000 Russian soldiers on three sides of Ukraine and not use them. So this is very, very serious, and I would say that Ukraine is in mortal danger, and this is why I think that the West needs to apply heavy sanctions right now, because by the time the Russian tanks are in Kyiv, the national capital of Ukraine, it will be too late.
What have you thought of the response from Western countries so far? For example, the UK government has announced sanctions against banks and quote-unquote high net worth individuals. I don't know if those are oligarchs or whatever the case might be, maybe. And the German chancellor announced that they will not give the permit to the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which is like key pipeline. for Germany. So
yes, those are exactly what needs to happen. I think the Nord Stream 2, holding up the Nord Stream 2 certification, it will bite. The Germans have been coy about all of that. They wouldn't come out and say that up until now. The Biden administration was pushing them hard on that. And the fact is that the original pipeline actually runs through Ukraine. And in 2006 and in 2009, Russia and Ukraine got into a supposedly a dispute over the pipeline fees because they're hosting the pipeline, they have to be paid. But what it really was a way for Putin to punish Ukraine and punish Western Europe. Now, this cuts both ways, though, because Putin still supplies, a big chunk of the natural gas to Europe, and especially to Germany. And if he decides to turn that gas off, in wintertime, it's going to be a problem because Putin had this agreement with Europe to actually ship more gas than he was, because the Europeans have an underground storage unit where they store the natural gas, and that is not filled up. And I think that is by design. So he has the power to cripple Germany's economy, which runs on natural gas, and also, it's still a pretty harsh winter. And so if he cut the gas off, that would not be great. Nevertheless, the West has got to do something now. President Zelensky of Ukraine spoke at the Munich Security Conference over the weekend, and he was saying, we really need our friends to talk the talk and walk the walk, and we need them to do it now. And that is really important to put sanctions in place. But more than that, because that's not going to deter Putin, it's important to do it now, because sanctions will not dislodge him once he takes the entire country. But it's also important for NATO to start putting additional troops and weapons into its eastern flank countries, not to be provocative, but to protect them. Because as you learn in political science and military history, you base your planning not on your opponent's intentions, but on his capabilities. And Putin has demonstrated that he is one of the most powerful militaries in the world and has sufficient capabilities to plunge Western Europe into chaos if he wants to. So we've got to be prepared. We've got to deter further aggression by Putin.
Okay. What have you thought so far of Canada's response to all of this?
Well, the Prime Minister has been conferring over the last few weeks with Western allies. I think he released a statement last night, and I think he said all the right things. Canada should have been giving lethal military assistance to Ukraine all the way along, but last week Canada actually did announce an additional $8 million or so worth of lethal assistance, plus a big loan for Ukraine. I expect when President Biden announces further sanctions today, because the Americans are playing this little game where they're saying that maybe it's not an invasion at this point because the troops, the Russians have had troops in there since 2014, which is true, but they just haven't been wearing insignia. This is very different because the Russians are actually stepping over the line and saying they're stepping over the line and saying they're going to be signing, defense treaties with these breakaway people. So Canada's going to wait to see what Biden does, and then when Biden announces it, I think Canada will shortly thereafter announce additional sanctions on the Russians.
All right.
But I've got to say Canada's got to contribute more to NATO, and we're going to have to bolster our allies in the eastern flank of Europe to keep them safe.
Okay. Thank you, Jeffrey. Great to hear from you. Yeah. Jeffrey Johnston writes for the Kingston Whig Standard. Crisis communications expert Barry Mclaughlin joins me after the news from senior partner transformleaders.ca. This is City News.
News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, February 22nd. Good morning, I'm Danielle Bain. Right now in Ottawa, it's -8. In Smiths Falls, -6. There is a freezing rain warning in effect for both regions. Here's what's making news this hour. One of the main organizers of the trucker convoy, Tamara Leach, is still stuck in custody. Leach was denied bail by a judge this morning after the judge believed she would still partake in unlawful activity if she were released. Another hearing is underway right now for organizer Pat King, who broadcasted his arrests on Facebook a few days ago. A number of videos that were posted by King himself throughout the convoy protests are being played in the courtroom as evidence to determine whether King should be released or not. Stay with City News for more as King's hearing plays out. Ottawa's mayor believes this crisis is not over yet, with protesters waiting at camps outside the city for a possible return. There are checkpoints still leading up to the downtown area, and Jim Watson says tomorrow's city council meeting will focus on helping businesses who have been affected by the downtown shutdowns. The latest COVID numbers from the province show 1,038 people hospitalized with COVID-19 today. There are 319 people in ICUs. There have also been another 24 deaths reported today, and there are 1,282 new cases reported in Ontario, with 103 in Ottawa, 25 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, 9 in Eastern Ontario, and 4 in Renfrew. City News Time, 11:32. I'm Danielle Bain, and for news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Oh, it's great to welcome back Barry Mclaughlin, Senior Partner, TransformLeaders.ca, our expert in crisis communications. Morning, Barry.
Good morning, Rob. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Great to be here in post-occupation Ottawa.
Post-occupation, yeah. Some minor skirmishes here and there now, and these I don't know what do you call them, base camps or campsites or whatever.
My take on it was that they're on their way home, or they're on their way. You don't quite know some of them, but I don't think. There's no sign they're intending to come back into Ottawa. But anyway, they got to park overnight somewhere.
I guess so. So look, you've called Ottawa home for a long, long time, Barry. You're an Ottawa guy, right? You're an Ottawa guy.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about the city, like what should change in Ottawa after the scenes that we've been through over the last 3 weeks? For example, tomorrow there's going to be a city council meeting. Oh, goody. And the talk is already beginning. I've had Vern White on, the senator, former police chief, about, look, for once and for all, get vehicle traffic off of Wellington, for example. That's one conversation. But what should change in Ottawa?
Well, actually, I'm not in favor of taking vehicle traffic off Wellington. I think with bollards, like I have an office in Washington in which they've closed off the Pennsylvania Avenue to the White House, and it's just a drag. I don't think it's necessary with the, like I've talked to you about this before in London and Washington, that they can press a button and up comes these electronic bollards right from the pavement. You don't need to close it off permanently to traffic. It wouldn't stop 20,000 protesters milling and camping on it. I'm not sure it's an entire solution anyway, just by closing off the traffic. We should never have allowed them to get to where they were. I think most people now realize that.
Yeah.
I think we have to learn lessons. Come back to your question. What lessons have we learned? Well, in policing, I think we have a police force. They're very good people, but they appear to be set up for not a capital city. They seem to be set up for, I don't know, Kitchener or somewhere where we're not the nation's capital with organized protests and now full-scale occupation and encampment. I think we have to learn that lesson. It can happen here. I think we completely underestimated the global kind of messaging that permeated this. It wasn't just about the particulars of the COVID mandates. I think it was far wider and deeper than that, and we weren't remotely prepared for it.
And just on that, just let me jump in there, Barry.
Sure.
You think some people were here because they felt that they were part of a movement?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
They like me, wouldn't have the first idea how to drive a truck, whatever. But maybe they felt like, well, these are my people, or whatever the case might be.
I think the truckers were the wedge in that created an initial storyline. They clombed onto it. It wasn't really the central thing. The trucks were necessary to blockade the streets and to make the noise, and they certainly accomplished that. We knew they were coming for a week. We all watched it on our television coming from the west and the east, and the chief admitted he thought it was a 48-hour protest. Okay. So that's the other thing that has to change. Do we have a police services board that has any kind of teeth at all? I mean, one of the members said, this is a fundamental governance issue. So we're not sure with this police services board, did they really ask the chief, what is your actual operational plan? You say it may not be a police solution. So what are you talking about? What tangible resources do you need? We've heard the RCMP and OPP were saying, look, we can send our people in, but what's the plan for them?
Yeah.
Well, what do you plan? Like, where's the plan? So I don't think we ever know of one that existed. Failed leadership, I think, would be another thing. It sometimes requires you to have proper strategic intelligence, et cetera, all those elements that didn't appear to be there. Eventually you bring in the you bring in the heavyweight, you bring in the Emergencies Act. And it makes you wonder, that City of Ottawa Emergency Act, does that really do anything? The province-wide emergency that Premier Ford implemented, I guess that didn't do anything. So we obviously, I guess, needed the National Emergencies Act, because somehow it had some elements in it that the other two didn't have. I think that's a huge question.
Which even I think there is debatable.
Sure. Sure it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you have to be satisfied that the other two just didn't do the job. Or did we just not execute what we needed to do earlier? That's really the issue, I believe.
Okay. Now, it cost one police chief his job in Peter Slowly. Yep. A lot of careers never be the same after this, I suspect. But what did you think after Chief Slowly was ousted? What did you think of the performance of the interim chief, Steve Bell? How did you think he did? Very much like thrust into the spotlight.
Yeah, right from the get-go of him taking over, he looked like he was in charge. He knew what he wanted to do. He executed it. He was also in those news conferences with Chief Slowly, and he would kind of come up and be the second fiddle in it. And, I guess we'd love to hear from him, but what did he think of all that sort of non-action for the first 2 weeks? What did he think of that? He was in the news conferences, but suddenly he came to the fore, and you kind of wonder, maybe he's now doing the thing that maybe he was telling Chief Slowly to do and hadn't done it.
Or maybe he was doing what Chief Slowly had planned to do as soon as the reinforcements came, right?
Well, again, I think I've spoken about that. But, anyway, I feel sorry for Chief Slowly. He did adopt a strategy, okay?
Yeah.
And it is a classic Harvard University. Roger Fisher, I attended his course, negotiate and de-escalate, negotiate and de-escalate, negotiate and de-escalate. He thought he was dealing with rational actors. He wasn't. They were not interested in any of that. Thank you very much.
Okay. And what did you think about how the Ottawa police communicated throughout the operation to end the protest? I thought the social media, I don't know how, if I'm at a protest, I don't know how often I'm looking at my Twitter account, but it was interesting, an interesting element to it, but I'd like to know what you think about it.
Yeah, it's an important tool, social media. When you're actually in operation, you want to inform people, you want to correct the errors of reporting, et cetera. That's what was done. So that kicked into gear in the final 2 days of the sweep through, and I think it was very helpful. It finally put them, in the kind of driver's seat, informing the public of what was going on. It may not have been perfect. I've heard, they were claiming this and they had to retract, but it's never perfect. But you must do it in real time. You must act immediately. You must set the record straight. And I think they did that in those 2 days. Where they were before all this, I don't know. And I think it's to say, if the strategy at the top is wrong, your communication is not going to be great either. But the final 2 days, it all came together.
Yeah. So in the end, I mean, you should never lose sight of the fact it lasted for a month. It lasted for a month. So Can you call the conclusion of this a success?
No.
It lasted for a month. I mean,
well, it was okay. Here's why it was a partial success.
Okay.
No one was serious. Well, nobody died, and nobody was seriously injured.
Right.
That is a success. That's not minor. That's a significant success. It's really the 4 weeks versus 1 week. This is where the people of Ottawa lost confidence in the police and in City Hall. They lost the confidence that they were being either looked after, protected, and that they were doing the job. They almost took it into their own hands at times with frustration.
Right.
So I think that's really a very important part of this. This could have been a wonderful 1 week. Okay, they were allowed to protest. We got them moving. I mean, I said to you a week ago or so ago, maybe 10 days ago, watching the clear out of the bridge in Windsor, that they did. The police then did. I said, resolutely march forward, stop. Resolutely march forward, stop. That's what I said at the time that they needed to be doing now. And only, in the final 2 days did they decide to do this. Again, you need resources. There's no question. Where's the operational plan and how those resources work? We had no idea. So I'm just saying that it's a lessons learned thing. It could have been far worse. And a really serious learning has to come out of this, for sure.
Okay. Well, let's move along then. Putin's speech yesterday was described as remarkable, dangerous, frightening, all of these things, and it is quickly followed by military action in eastern Ukraine in these so-called separatist regions. Yeah. What did you make of that speech yesterday?
Well, it was the real Putin came out.
Okay.
He's learned from Donald Trump the authoritarian body language. A friend of mine's a consultant in New York, and she said I went to visit Trump when he was, still Trump, the developer, and he does all the power play moves. He puts his seat higher behind the desk. He doesn't look up until he makes you very uncomfortable. Only then does he look up. He doesn't listen. He just talks. A lot of that kind of studied body language. The rambling 1 hour speech, again, classic Trump, rambling all over the place, ridiculously stupid things he said. In effect, he was there to diminish Ukraine. He wasn't a real country, on and on and on. It was horrible. And then when he engaged, it's very interesting. He's former head of Russia's spy service, as you know. And so part of the audience of this was a guy named Sergei Narishnikin, the head of the Russian spy service. And so he starts uncomfortably stuttering, and Putin snaps at him. He says, "Speak directly." And eventually he got the words out. The guy actually said he supported these 2 districts of Ukraine becoming part of Russia. Of course, this is the real agenda. Putin told him that wasn't the subject of the discussion. It was only recognition. In other words, that he verbalized that what the real thing going on here. They're taking it over. It was already a done deal with the lower house of parliament in Russia. I mean, I worked in Ukraine and I worked in Estonia. And the fears of the people of Ukraine and the people of Estonia were palpable even, 7-8 years ago when I was there.
Wow.
The actions of Putin then, they call them the Putin-Utin. They implemented all kinds of harassment, physical and otherwise, of officials to just demonstrate. Like I was in a town that was a 500-year-old town. It was a college town called Tartu. It was never on any maps because Russia took them off the maps. And they were 18 miles from the border. And the people were quite frightened. We did a seminar there in crisis communications. And it's very interesting that, Putin's has been after these countries ever since. He's not going to give up on them. So the real issue is how the West responds to this. I know the only, too many references were made to Nazis and Hitler, but the one that is relevant is Sudetenland and the deal that they thought they had struck in 1938, Neville Chamberlain and all that unraveled. Hitler wasn't satisfied with taking over the Sudetenland. Putin won't be satisfied with those 2 counties. He's got them all amassed there. I think we're still looking at an invasion. And it's very important for the West to have profound, pushback here. You can't create World War III, but honest to gosh, he seemed to brush off what he did after he went into Crimea, and I'm concerned he's going to just do that again here. So this is really an unsettling situation. Sure. And Putin learns how to use power in a very, very aggressive way, and of course he mostly gets away with it.
Okay. What a complicated world. My goodness, Barry Mclaughlin, thank you for helping us try to sort it all out. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, bye-bye. Senior partner, transformleaders.ca, with us every week. Barry Mclaughlin. Peter Fraser from Cardinal Financial and Manulife Securities coming right up for our Money Monday on a Tuesday on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
Opening a business especially in a pandemic, in that kind of situation, is very challenging. First, people don't know me, people don't know my product. To build a new clientele, to build a trust for them, to show them that I care about it. I do love my food. That was the biggest challenge. And of course, in all lockdown, where I had to face it regards my employee, guests, ladies, what they work for me, I didn't want to tell them, sorry, I'm closed, I'm not having a job for you. No, they have families, they have kids to feed. So this is very important because we are family orientated. And we decided to open. We, of course, essential business. So been very tough, very, very tough, as we didn't see people on the road. Market was completely quiet, but we knew that we have to wait, and we knew that we're gonna be fine. In this town, we built online shop, Vedel Online, and we did Uber Eats, which one is picking up and is very, very popular. We have a really good feedback. So this is the song from my heart. And and we try to expand. I'm thinking about opening another location. So I want to make Vedel famous. I want to make the Vedel place to be for all the families with kids. Try the traditional food, what the grandparents cooked in the countries when they're from, or even Canadian people. They're more than welcome to come and try our famous pierogis. I try to be passionate about my food, organic food made with love, with all homemade, organic. So you can find food from all over the Europe: Polish, German, Ukrainian, Romanian, French, Armenian. So all kind of different types of food. Homemade lunches. We focus on the homemade lunches, grandma style. I keep always saying, like in my Genia Babcia house, how she cooked. I wanted this love and this food over here because I believe that will bring all people around me. And all the organic cold cuts, lovely selection of sausages, cheeses, European cheeses, great selections of mustards, French cookies. All what you need from Europe you can find here at the Vedel Touch of Europe. If you think good way, that's it. You have to. I had the option to cry in the corner and say, oh, pandemic is coming. No, you need to stand up and fight for it and have your eyes open, think outside of the box and do it.
Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
So it's an interesting day in the markets, to say the least, because the markets are reacting to the geopolitical news events of the day, and that has sent markets lower slightly. And by that, I mean by less than 1% losses all the way around. But I mean, it's been a tough start to the year for the stock market. But the TSX is down about 1/3 of 1% right now. And then when you look at the Dow, the NASDAQ, and the S&P, they're down between 0.6% and about 1% for the NASDAQ. The Canadian dollar, slightly higher, 78.5 cents U.S. Strong oil price today, though. That's one of the big stories. Up 2%, had been up 3% earlier. 92.30, give or take, U.S. a barrel. Gold has climbed above 1,900 U.S. an ounce. It's up $3.70 today. Not so for Bitcoins, $37,620 U.S. for one Bitcoin. And one of the interesting things to watch to just one more benchmark, and that's the yield on a 10-year Treasury note in the United States is just shy of 2%, 1.948, and everybody's watching 2%. It had been above 2%, and it had been as low as 1.8% this morning, so very, very volatile. As we welcome Peter Fraser back from Cardinal Planning and Manulife Securities. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Hi, Peter. Yeah, another interesting day. Right, Peter? They never stop. What I wouldn't give for Ottawa, the town that fun forgot sometimes. But nevertheless, today we're going to go through some of the websites that Peter recommends for getting some financial information. So let's go through this list, Peter. It's a very interesting list that you've come up with.
Yeah, change the channel on some of that weighty stuff going on domestically and around the world. Boy, following Barry is a hard act to... But, I thought we could take a look, actually, at some popular Canadian money-related websites that listeners can check out on their own, because, as you rightly stated, almost every opening comment for the whole year so far, confusion and stress, it can affect your planning, and often it's been said that information is power. So here's some good sites that I think do provide some great information. They're all Canadian, and the first one I want to look at is called hardbacon.ca.
Hardbacon.ca. Okay, all right.
So they say it's built to help you make better financial decisions, which is a good thing. It's a fintech company or financial technology.
Okay.
The Hard Bacon app connects, if you want it to, it can connect all your bank accounts, all your credit cards, all your investment accounts, and give you sort of a real-time, one-look, complete picture of, your net worth and how things are growing in the course of a given day.
Okay.
Also offers you the ability to do some planning, light ideas or really deep ideas, but you could set up financial goals on your Hard Bacon app. You can track how and where you spend your money. You could start to learn how to start saving. And the part I like about it is it actually offers neat financial incentives to help you start each strategy or goal. And so if you go to their site, they've got little financial sort of gimmies if you start down the path of building a strategy that they have instruction and teaching on. So I like that one, and it's called hardbacon.ca.
All right. Youngandthrifty.ca.
Young and Thrifty, yeah. This is for David, but it bills itself as Canada's premier financial planning blog. In fact, it was named the best personal finance blog in Canada.
Wow.
And dedicated to really breaking down the sometimes intimidating financial jargon. We love our short form descriptions in this business, but offers kind of fun, easily understood, bite-sized chunks. I like that their posts are very understandable. It's almost a redo of what we all should have been taught in high school but weren't. So they've really got a great piece on how to teach financial literacy to your kids. And I think that one's a winner. And they offer things like cool online banking hacks, discount brokerage reviews, a really good guide to Canada's top robo-advisor offerings, and they really do set themselves apart on that score, and that's Young and Thrifty.
Young and Thrifty. From there to MoneySense, moneysense.ca.
Yeah, MoneySense is pretty well known. It's actually a digital magazine, and mostly has journalists and qualified financial professionals as their content producers. So, you can take a look this week. The top things trending on MoneySense are practical ideas like, I like this one actually, a TFSA contribution room calculator. I'm always asked, how can I find out, what I'm able to, how can I find out easily what I'm able to contribute? Yeah, they do a big survey on Canada's best credit card offerings, so there's a new one out for 2022, and that's worth taking a look at. And also a high yield savings account survey. So, sometimes you just have to park money, and in a near zero interest rate environment, it still helps to try to find out who's eking out the best offering. So pretty comprehensive, practical guidance on pretty much everything financial, and that's money sense.
All right, we only have a minute left. CanadianCouchPotato.com.
Let's hit it. So this caters to folks who seek a laissez-faire approach. Easy, set it, forget it, model portfolios, ETFs, so on. So just think minimalist. The site's goal is to help take as much work as possible off your shoulders and provide more free time to do what you like. So there are a few others in Canada that are worth a quick look. Motley Fool, Globe Investor, Yahoo Finance, and listeners can find all of these recs and more at my personal site, cardinalplanning.ca.
That's a good one, too. Cardinalplanning.ca. That's very good. Hey, that's very good. CanadianCouchPotato.com. Okay, I'm going to have to check that out. All right.
Worth a look.
Peter, thank you so much.
Thank you, Rob.
Yep, we'll speak next week on Monday. Peter Fraser from Cardinal Planning, where he's certified financial planner, and with Manulife Securities, here with us every Monday and on the occasional Tuesday as well. Rob Snow Show back tomorrow, and we'll do the Talkback Hour again. Of course, Sam Laprade standing by right after the noon news with all the latest breaking news from City News.
The Rob Snow Show.
Weekdays at 9 on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley.
This program is brought to you by